It all begins on the day the world fell after humanity's greatest heroes were defeated by invaders. In the middle of a scene of total destruction, only two warriors remain, trying to catch their breath. The sacred swordsman Zenon Glorious desperately wonders if they are really the only survivors left. The mage Ael's coven sadly confirms that all their other companions ended up falling in combat. She laments that not even their most powerful allies had any chance against the enemy's devastating force. Determined to keep fighting, Zenon asks Eels to focus only on supporting him during the battle. The swordsman draws his giant weapon, making it very clear that he intends to go all out against the opponent. Zenon charges toward the gigantic red, armored monster, planning to deliver one single, precise strike. Ellis warns that not even everyone united was able to beat it, but the warrior refuses any thought of retreating now. The warrior then prepares his powerful sword technique, channeling intense light energy into the blade. With a focused gaze, he activates the final form of his combat style, releasing a devastating golden aura. Seeing that massive amount of energy, Els realizes her companion truly has no intention of giving up. The swordsman leaps at his glowing sword directly at the immense dark, armored creature. The monster extends its giant hand covered in red flames to block the hero's bright attack. Zenon grits his teeth as he feels the terrible pressure of the enemy's firepower trying to consume him. Even under heavy resistance, the warrior keeps pushing his concentrated attack through the opponent's fire. He manages to land a strike on the monster's powerful armor, which cracks under the impact of his sacred blade. Knowing he needs more strength to overcome the enemy, the swordsman desperately calls for Illis's support. The mage responds promptly and begins casting her support magic as a green aura surrounds her body. She creates magical platforms in the air to help the hero gain momentum and even more speed for his attack. The monster delivers a crushing blow to the ground, but Zenon manages to dodge by jumping high using the platforms. He uses the last boost of energy to launch himself toward the sky, preparing his most powerful move. Letting out a battle cry, the warrior channels all the sacred electricity left into his sword of light. Zenon hits the monster head-on, causing a colossal golden explosion that lights up the entire battlefield. Ellis is amazed by the impressive power of that technique and believes they might actually have a chance. However, she panics when she sees the monster is still standing and completely intact after taking the hit. Even facing that absurd resistance, the swordsman refuses to stop and tries to keep attacking the enemy. The extreme effort takes its toll, and the hero ends up taking heavy damage due to the severe strain on his body. Worried, Ellis shouts a warning that his physical structure won't hold up if he keeps pushing himself like this. Despite the warning, Zenon insists on fighting and keeps gathering all the remaining energy he can manifest. Realizing her friend's reckless determination, the mage gets an expression of someone who has made a drastic decision. She reaches into her clothes to grab a mysterious item she had been keeping in secret. The young woman conjures a prison of light that completely immobilizes Zenon, leaving him incredibly confused. Ellis explains that he is the last hope to save the world, and that is why she won't let him fall right there. The warrior shouts that if they don't defeat the monster now, everyone will end up being lost anyway. She says she is entrusting everything to him because she is certain he will be able to change this terrible fate. The mage then reveals a golden pocket watch, a magical relic passed down through generations in her family. A massive red magic circle appears above them as she warns there is no more time for explanations. Els asks Zenon to promise that, at the next opportunity, he won't let those wretched invaders win. The watch starts to glow intensely, while the hero demands to know what she is planning to do. The mage says she is leaving the fate of the world in his hands, but the swordsman begs to be freed to fight. The magic circle activates in front of Zenon, covering the hero in an intense and mysterious light. With tears in her eyes, she says goodbye to her battle companion, showing a sad but accepting smile. A colossal beam of blue light shoots toward the heavens, marking the activation of the supreme magic. The energy expands devastatingly, consuming everything around it while carrying out the magical process. After the great explosion of light, the mysterious pocket watch falls cracked onto the deserted battlefield. The golden artifact is left behind on the dry earth, completely ruined by the intense combat. Fallen on the ground and extremely weak, Ills coughs heavily as she tries to stay conscious. After after using the relic. Looking at the horizon, the young woman gives a faint smile upon realizing the transportation spell worked. That was the mystical watch of the ancients, a legendary item capable of altering reality and causing reincarnation. Zenon's soul floats through infinite space as he hears the last words of hope left by his friend. Elis makes one final silent plea, begging him to manage to change the chaotic reality of that world. Fallen on the ground and heavily injured, the young mage prays that her desperate wish for salvation comes true. In the midst of a colossal explosion, she reveals in her thoughts the desire to win his heart in a next life. The warrior wakes up startled, shouting his companion's name inside a grand palace in broad daylight. Now with black hair, he gets up confused in a luxurious bed, feeling a strong pain in his head. He looks around the noble's fancy room and realizes that this must be the effect of the time-traveling artifact. The young man looks at himself, desperately trying to understand what just happened to his reality. At that moment, a young maid enters the room looking a bit frightened and asks if something is wrong. He orders them to bring weapons to return to combat, but she thinks young Master Noah just had a nightmare. Confused at being called by another name, he asks who she is, and the young woman introduces herself as his maid, Lydia. The young man grips his own wrist tightly upon noticing that the texture of his skin feels completely different. He goes into shock looking at his hands, realize that this is definitely not his original body. The young man wonders if he ended up possessing someone else's body or if something even more bizarre happened to him. He directly asks where they are and who he is, leaving the maid very worried about his behavior. Lydia takes a step back, wondering if he is acting so strangely due to the delirium of a high fever. Impatient, the young man grabs her by the shoulders, demanding she answer his direct questions immediately. She reveals that this is the Dasker mansion and that he is the fourth son of the family, known as Master No Daskor. When asked about the kingdom's calendar, she answers that they are currently in the year 850. The warrior realizes the relic sent him 10 years into the past, before the apocalyptic invasion even began. To make matters worse, he reincarnated right into the terrible Daskor family, the sworn rivals of sacred swordsmen like him. At that moment, a knock on the door announces the arrival of another person who introduces herself as Selena. Another maid enters the room, carrying a bowl, and announces she brought the remedy for the young master. She says that Master Scar prepared that does out of pure concern for No's weakened state of health. The young man stares at the bowl of remedy with extreme suspicion in his deep purple eyes. He analyzes the red liquid and begins to suspect there is something very wrong with the composition of that dose. With a quick slap, he throws the bowl away, shattering the glass on the floor and startling the two servants present. 3 house guards enter the room with serious expressions, and Noah harshly asks who they are. The group's leader states they heard a suspicious noise and decided to check if there was a problem. The long-haired guard observes the situation with a cold, calculating look that does not go unnoticed. He scolds No for wasting Master Scar's goodwill and warns that he will bring a new dose immediately. No mocks the word remedy, causing the guard to threaten to use force if he keeps offending the master. The young man then challenges the guard himself to drink the liquid, directly accusing it of actually being a toxin. Thanks to his old power, he knows that sacred energy repels evil, and the color of that remedy confirms it's tainted. Seeing they've been found out, the leader of the guard states he will have to make him drink that substance by force. No gives a smug smile, realizing their false mask of loyalty has finally fallen apart. The young man says the guards will make great punching bags for him to start getting used to this body's reactions. With a defiant look, the warrior warns he is going to have some fun while dealing with the traitors. The leader orders the other 2 henchmen to move forward, to immobilize and restrain the young master by force. The henchmen obey promptly and start walking toward him under the watchful eyes of the maids. One of the attackers tries to reach out to grab No, who prepares to counter the enemy's advance. The young man dodges with agility and lands an extremely forceful kick right in the middle of the first guard's stomach. The struck man gasps and is thrown far back against the wall, feeling the full physical impact of the blow. The second guard charges in angry, throwing a punch, but No dodges by crouching with total ease. He takes advantage of the opening and delivers a powerful uppercut, hitting the opponent's chin squarely. Seeing the two fallen men, No laments that the fragility of his new body didn't let him knock them out completely. The young man decides he will investigate the motives behind that poisoning attempt as soon as he finishes cleaning up that mess. The leader orders the guards to draw their swords to finish as the job, not caring about hurting No anymore. The hero gets ready to fight for real, but is taken by surprise when something strange appears before his eyes. Screens showing the enemies, stats, and abilities appear in the air as they yell for him to give up. No is amazed to see an evaluation window, revealing the attributes of the enemies surrounding him. He wonders where this rare skill came from while noting that the opponent's technique is of a very low level. The two guards launch their attack, delivering sword strikes, but the young man dodges with mastery and ease. One of the guards is left completely unable to react upon seeing No's fist approaching his face at high speed. The young man delivers a devastating spinning kick, knocking the opponent to the ground with extreme ease and force. Taking advantage of the enemy's fall, No disarms the guard and takes a firm grip on his sword. The leader of the guards decides to step in and delivers a direct attack, but No blocks the blow with his new weapon. The two blades clash violently, producing sparks that light up the tension of the dangerous combat in the room. They exchange fast and precise sword attacks, but No demonstrates overwhelming technical superiority. The young man manages to masterfully push back the leader of the traitors, leaving the two maids shocked at the scene. The leader ironically praises his strength, and No challenges him to stop watching and come fight for real. Suddenly, No widens his eyes as he feels a drastic and dangerous change happening in his own energy. Intense purple smoke starts emanating from his body, revealing the terrible manifestation of a dark core. This core is the main source of shadowy energy exclusive to the feared swordsmen of the Dronzer family. On the other hand, Sacred Core is the source of divine light that originally belonged to Zenon's old bloodline. Under normal circumstances, these two opposing forces should never be able to coexist in the body of the same warrior. The leader laughs seeing the dark core spiral out of control and decides to reveal a terrible secret to the young master. He reveals that the remedy given to No was actually a toxin designed to overload his shadowy energy. The villain explains that the effort of combat triggered a surge of uncontrolled energy that will destroy No from the inside. Knowing the danger of his body giving out, the hero decides to risk everything on a desperate survival gamble. The hero tries something unprecedented, manipulating the two opposing energies inside his own chest at the same time. He uses the purifying energy of his sacred core to suppress the violent advance of the dark power. The guard leader mocks the hero's desperate attempt and prepares the first style of his shadow technique. The villain dashes forward like a red blur, delivering a fast attack that seems to tear space itself in half. No remains calm and focused, tracking the attacker's movements, even under the heavy pressure of the enemy strike. He raises the sword at the exact moment, blocking the surprise charge and generating a massive energy impact wave. The villain is shocked to see that the young master managed to react to a stealth attack fueled by dark energy. Furious at being blocked, the guard calls the young man a weakling and warns he needs to learn his place. No means a cold look, showing he isn't intimidated by his opponent's empty provocations. The young man executes a perfect circular motion with his sword, generating a strong shield of golden light around himself. The opponent responds by channeling a massive amount of shadow mist and delivering a devastating blow his way. The two massive waves of energy clash, generating a spectacular showdown of golden light against red shadows. The guard begins to feel the massive pressure of No's attack and realizes he is about to be completely overpowered. Noah uses the opening to cut through the enemy's shadows using a fast and precise sequence of sword strikes. With an agile jump, he hits the opponent squarely, tearing his clothing and causing a deep cut. No analyzes his rival's limit and knows he needs to end the fight soon before his own body ends up giving out. The villain tries to keep his posture of superiority, mocking the visible exhaustion the young man begins to show. No smiles back and points out that the villain's polite speech has vanished, revealing his despair and panic. Annoyed by the young man's audacity, the villain charges, delivering a furious attack wrapped in dense dark shadows. He shouts angrily, assuring that No will never be able to predict or escape his presence. Concealing technique, No is surrounded by a whirlwind of red smoke that blocks all his vision and tries to confuse him completely. The maids watch anxiously from afar, unable to see the young master who disappeared into the shadow attack. No focuses purely on his combat intuition, allowing his aura to shine intensely through the smoke. The young man locates the adversary's blind spot and lands a precise strike right in the middle of the villain's hidden charge. A violent blast happens in the center of the room, ending the sword clash in a highly impactful way. The guard falls defeated and heavily injured to the floor, unable to understand how the young man overcame his secret technique. No explains that even hiding his body, his presence was still visible because he relied too much on a simple trick. Totally shocked, the villain collapses on the ground without strength, trying to comprehend the origin of that overwhelming power. No sheathes his sword, calmly revealing that not even he fully understands the limits of this new hybrid power. He reflects thoughtfully on how his old sacred core and the dark core acted in perfect harmony. He realizes his power is now the perfect union between his original sacred core and the dark core of this new body. The young man reflects that if he manages to master this unprecedented hybrid force, he will be able to save the world once again. With a slight smile on his face, he mentally thanks his late friend Els for giving him a new hope. The servants run desperately toward the young man to check if he is hurt, and if they need to call a doctor. No says he is fine, but his attention is drawn to a small black winged creature appearing at the bedroom window. It is a small messenger dragon carrying an important sealed letter right in its mouth. Lydia takes the mail and explains that it's a formal summons coming directly from the current patriarch, Lord Victor. The maid hands the sealed letter to the young master, warning that the leader wants to confirm his participation in the dispute. No looks thoughtfully at the paper, knowing he needs to gather information about this war of succession to plan for the future. The hero decides to ask the maids if they know the details behind this terrible dispute among heirs. Lydia confirms immediately and says that all the servants working for the Daskor house know the rules of the test. She explains that the conflict was made to strengthen the bloodline and basically consists of a hunt for power cores. In this dispute, the siblings fight each other, and the winner gets the right to take the defeated one's dark core for themselves. No realizes with horror that the members of this family spent generations eliminating each other to secure the house's leadership. The young maid asks worriedly if the young man truly intends to put his life at risk by participating in this cruel test. Showing an enigmatic smile, the young man answers confidently, stating she will find out the answer very soon. He remembers that in his past life, the glorious family was loved by the people as a true symbol of divine justice. However, the Daskor house is the absolute opposite, being feared and hated for using the forbidden power of dark cores. Although mysterious, everyone knows the current patriarch, Victor Daskor, is considered the strongest swordsman of humanity. Wearing elegant formal clothes, the young man approaches the grand gate of the main hall, determined to figure out the place. He takes a deep breath, focused on seeing with his own eyes the truth hidden behind that infamous family of villains. The young man enters the hall imposingly, formally announcing his arrival under the name No Daskor to the patriarch. He walks down the red carpet, observing his siblings who were already waiting for him lined up in the center of the grand hall. No walks with slow and elegant steps, closely analyzing the posture of each member of his new family. The eldest son of the bloodline is Damien Daskor, a heavy, armored warrior with an extremely serious expression. Next to him is Julia Dasker, the eldest daughter who shows off long, silver hair and a cold, distant expression. The second male child is Cease Daskor, a young man with messy blonde hair who seems totally bored and indifferent. The second daughter is Eve Daskor, a dark-haired young woman who stays quiet and composed in her own posture. Suddenly, No's gaze fills with anger as he spots the brother responsible for plotting against his physical health. It is the third son, Scar Daskor, the red-haired man who had No poisoned silently. Julia notices No's improvement, and the young man confirms he finally managed to identify the cause of his illness. When questioned, the young man surprises everyone by stating he intends to dedicate himself entirely to sword training. The young heiress narrows her eyes suspiciously, noticing the drastic change in her younger brother's attitude. Scar butts in mockingly, laughing at the idea of a weakling training, and advises No not to waste his time for nothing. No retorts of the coward who lacks the courage to face him personally should just keep his mouth shut. Scar gets furious at his brother's insolent reply and threatens to end him while gritting his teeth with hatred. Eve steps in authoritatively, telling both of them to shut up and warning that the time for arguing is over there. One of the guards on site announces loudly that the powerful patriarch, Lord Victor, has just arrived at the meeting hall. Heavy footsteps echo across the red carpet as the feared leader approaches his imposing iron throne. The older children close their eyes immediately, bowing their heads in a sign of deep respect to the feared patriarch. The younger siblings repeat the gesture, demonstrating the extreme fear, submission they all harbor for their father's figure. Noah feels a chill down his spine as he faces the overwhelming presence radiating a monstrous amount of power. He recognizes that legendary black, armored warrior whose glorious deeds were famous in his past life. That is the feared Victor Daskor, the 9-star dark swordsman considered the strongest in the entire world. The patriarch sits on his throne, observing the gathered group, and comments with satisfaction that all the heirs are present. Victor leans his arms imposingly and officially announces the start of the council for the succession dispute. He focuses his stern gaze on the fourth son and explains that this summons serves to confirm No's intentions. The leader asks the young man what he intends to achieve with that weak body that miraculously survived the illness. The young man shows a faint smile full of mockery and confidence, proving he is not afraid of his father's authority. With determination, No announces loud and clear that he will participate in the war and will end up as the sole winner. Victor asks threateningly if his son is really ready to declare war against all the candidates there. No calmly replies that his father's deduction is wrong, leaving the powerful leader intrigued by such audacity. The young man then clarifies that his true intention is to declare war against absolutely everyone in that great hall. Damien and Julia listen to the pronouncement with disdain, while Noah sees them purely as obstacles he needs to overcome. The hero knows very well that the list of rivals to be defeated isn't limited just to his older brothers and sisters. He shows absurd courage by including the patriarch Victor himself on the list of adversaries he intends to overcome. Noah flashes a defiant smile, making it very clear to everyone there that he won't spare even his own father from the dispute. Annoyed, Victor releases a massive wave of dark energy that crashes against the hero with extreme violence. The pressure from the patriarch's shadowy aura is so colossal that it begins to crack the grand stone pillars of the hall. Pieces of debris crumble from the walls due to the enormous amount of destructive power filling the room. Even suffering under the crushing gravity, No resists bravely. Recognizing the frightening power of the patriarch at its core, Victor glares at him with contempt and asks if the young master truly believes he is capable of surpassing his strength. No gives a fearless smile and replies shortly and directly, confirming yes without hesitating for a single second. The father continues the interrogation, wanting to know the real reason the young man is seeking such an immense amount of power. The hero replies seriously that he seeks strength to ensure no one can ever steal anything from him again in this new life. Upon hearing that answer full of selfish ambition, the patriarch breaks into a wide smile, showing pure satisfaction. Victor states he likes that attitude and that such greed is a very admirable quality for an heir of the Dasgors. The patriarch announces that Noah will participate in the dispute and challenges any heir who disagrees to step forward. The siblings react in different ways, while the cruel Scar becomes infuriated seeing his elimination plans fail. Powerful leader orders No to stay hungry for power, encouraging the heir to always seek more raw strength. The next day, the young man finds himself in the mansion's sunny courtyard, ready to begin an intense training routine. With a quick motion, he strikes a straw training dummy, testing his blade's precision and speed. The dummy is split in half, and No observes the result while the maids watch the training from afar with admiration. He feels his physical condition has improved a lot, but knows he is only at the basic limit to be able to fight. Because of the fusion of his cores, he cannot use the normal techniques of light, nor the family's shadow styles. The young man focuses his attention on his own hands, trying to unravel the secrets and possibilities of this hybrid power. Noah realizes he needs to hide the existence of the sacred core from everyone to prevent them from discovering his real identity. Suddenly, Julie appears in the training area, observing the young man and pointing out that he moves well for someone who was bedridden. The young woman comments that previously only Damien was the father's favorite, but now Noah has also caught the patriarch's attention. Julia walks over to the weapon rack, revealing she came there to personally test his new combat capability. With a serious look, she grips a wooden sword firmly and tells her younger brother they are going to start right away. Without giving No time to react, the young woman delivers a surprise strike, leaving the hero startled by her aggressiveness. He is forced to jump backward extremely quickly to manage to avoid the fast attack delivered by his sister. Julia shows a faint, wicked smile and asks ironically if her brother really thought she was just going to talk. No clicks his tongue in annoyance, realizing he won't get a break and will have to fight for real against his powerful relative. The young Harris leaps toward him, delivering consecutive, extremely agile cuts in the training field. The hero uses the training sword to block the charges, using the combat to figure out his current strength limits. Julia increases the speed of her attacks, delivering consecutive and precise thrusts attempting to break his defense. No dodges by millimeters a heavy attack that hits the ground, creating a small dust cloud in the training courtyard. Julia points out that her brother does have talent, but his level is still far below being considered acceptable. Noah visualizes Julia's data window and discovers she is a formidable 7-star rank warrior. The hero smirks from the corner of his mouth upon confirming her impressive strength, realizing how hard it will be to beat that opponent. Calling his performance disappointing, the young woman charges with fury, executing a lethal cut at high speed. Noah widens his eyes, amazed at the absurd speed of her attack that is dangerously approaching his body. With no alternative, he tightly grips the wooden handle and activates the power of his hybrid core, emanating a strong mixed energy. The young man manages to parry the powerful impact, blocking her blade at the last second amid a clash of energies. The warrior exerts a massive physical effort to withstand the pressure, realizing just how unstable his dark, sacred core is. With a quick motion, he deflects her sword and delivers an agile counterattack, releasing a strong burst of mixed light. Julia blocks the strike but is surprised, asking if this is the same dark sacred core they said was a failure. She mentions she heard rumors that her brother's core was defective from birth, and No reflects on that fact, intrigued. No realizes that this body possessed the dark sacred core from the beginning, and that others judged it as defective. He concludes that since no one knows his power is a rare mix of forces, there will be no problems fighting for real. The young man loses his composure for a second, and Julia comments cynically that he seems to be enjoying himself a lot. No leaps toward her, delivering a downward strike with all the mixed energy shining around his sword. Julia dodges the attack with extreme ease and approaches him, calling her brother by his name in a calm tone. She asks if he knows the real objective of the succession dispute, and the young man confirms he knows the answer. Julia says that saves time as No's wooden sword sword is thrown far from his hands across the training field. The young woman is enveloped in an intense dark mist and coldly asks No if she can take his dark core. The hero widens his eyes, extremely surprised and tense upon noticing his sister's sudden ruthless intent. No shouts desperately for Selena, asking her to bring his real sword, and the servant obeys running. The young maid throws the powerful real metal sword into the air so the young master can defend himself in time. No jumps and grabs the weapon's hilt, focusing all his electricity against his sister's advance. A huge collision of red and purple energy happens, making the young man groan in pain under the colossal impact of the blow. No grits his teeth hard, trying to hold back the absurd physical force the young woman is exerting against his blade. Julia executes consecutive and agile sword movements, but the young man manages to block the charges with agility. He focuses his purple gaze on the enemy blade, seeking to find any opening in Julia's combat style. The young woman lets out a sarcastic laugh and admits her younger brother is managing to surprise her in a good way. She demands enthusiastically that he show even more skills, while she continues pressing him with fierce attacks. Julia steps back, taking a leap backward, and challenges No to see if he can withstand her next special move. The young woman gets ready, adopting a special shadowy combat stance called the Dance of the Flame Shadow Sword. No realizes the danger of that overwhelming attack and decides to use all available energy to manage to block the strike. Julia charges from the sky, delivering a flaming slash of red shadow energy coming straight down at the young man. The hero blocks the attack at the last millisecond, generating a huge explosion of red and yellow sparks. The tremendous impact of the clashing swords generates a wave of wind that forces the maids to shield themselves from the dust. The young woman notices his defensive posture and asks provocatively if he intends to keep fighting with only one hand. She challenges him to use both hands if he wants to hold back the incredible raw strength she is applying in that combat. The two continue with their swords locked in an intense clash of physical power and determination in the training courtyard. No realizes he won't be able to hold the strike with just one hand and decides to grip the hilt with both hands. With a grunt of effort, the young master manages to apply full strength to push back his older sister's powerful weapon. Julia flashes a mocking smile, noticing she finally forced her younger brother to use both hands to defend himself. Despite the block, the pressure of the attack throws No backward, making the young man slide at high speed across the ground. He grits his teeth in anger, feeling the extreme exhaustion and aches caused by the violent exchange against his sister. The young man manages to break the impact, breaking the stone tiles of the courtyard floor with his feet due to the force. Julia stares at him with total seriousness in silence, analyzing the youngest heir's current state of wariness. No realizes, out of breath, that using all his hybrid power was only barely enough to hold off that blow. The young warrior notes with concern that his hands are shaking significantly due to the energy overload exerted. He mentally laments that this is the current physical limit endured by his unstable mixed core of power. Julia asks if he knows why Dasker family members don't take each other out immediately at the start of the dispute. She explains that weak dark cores grow slowly, and therefore no one focuses on heirs who are still weak. The young woman says harvesting a core is useless before it reaches a good level, while focusing her gaze on her shadow weapon. She adds that No was able to block and counterattack her strike in an extremely surprising way. Julia adopts a hostile stance, stating that a core with that level of resilience is already worth taking. No clicks his tongue, quite annoyed upon noticing that his sister is about to attack him with real ruthless intent. The young heiress leaps, gathering black flames on her blade to unleash the 8th form of her combat style. Suddenly, a loud voice echoes, ordering her to stop the attack immediately, interrupting the young woman's fatal action. An armored warrior named Kyle quickly appears, blocking Julia's downward strike with his own sword. Kyle shouts desperately, warning the young woman that if she continues with that violent charge, No will indeed end up gone. Julia tells him not to interfere with the core dispute, but he counters that No's core is of a very low rank. The young heiress retorts coldly, saying that's impossible because her younger brother blocked her strongest attack. No remains positioned right behind Kyle with an exhausted expression and gritted teeth, staring at the terrible opponent. Kyle explains he investigated at the Patriarch's request and confirms that No's core has already exhausted all its power. He questions if a stronger core wouldn't hold up much longer. Before reaching such a basic limit like that, No remains completely exhausted as he tries to recover his strength after the intense confrontation with his sister. Noticing his state, Julia sheathes her sword and admits she might have been wrong about the young man's real power. She makes a point of warning her younger brother that she still wishes to obtain his dark core in the future. The young woman challenges the young man to a real fight the moment he is stronger and his power has evolved. No flashes a confident smile and tells his sister he will eagerly wait for that day of real combat. As she walks away from the courtyard, Julia begins to think there is something very strange about No's abilities. She remembers the impact of the clash, knowing that blow would never be blocked by someone of such a low level. The young woman concludes with suspicion that her younger brother is hiding his real combat potential. Julia lets out a light laugh, showing she found this whole situation extremely entertaining and interesting. She hopes No grows in an interesting way, while screams of pure rage echo from another part of the mansion. Scar appears completely infuriated, shattering a glass against his own forehead due to the sheer hatred he is feeling. He cannot accept the fact that a weakling like Noah was allowed to participate in the grand succession dispute. The red-haired young man shouts indignantly because not even he had received so much attention from the family's patriarch in his entire life. A lackey tries to speak, but Scar interrupts him with an angry kick, yelling he will never accept this situation. The subordinate then approaches cautiously and reports an important secret directly into his master's ear. Upon hearing the information, Scar gives a wicked smile, revealing he just had a quite interesting idea. With an unhinged look, the villain swears he will drag No out of this hair dispute in a brutal way. Back in the courtyard, Kyle apologizes for the delay and introduces himself formally before No and the housemaids. The warrior reveals he was officially assigned to act as the young master's new combat instructor. He explains that the patriarch ordered the training to make up for the time the young man spent weakened in his bed. No activates his special evaluation skill to analyze his new tutor's power level in detail. He sees that the man's stats are impressive and concludes his capabilities are more than enough. Kyle asks if they should start the training, but the young master hesitates, noticing the man is holding a paper. The warrior extends his arm, handing over a sealed envelope, and states he received direct orders from Patriarch Victor. No opens the letter and reads that his first official mission is to investigate and eliminate a dangerous source of miasma. This dangerous phenomenon attracts terrible monsters that can only be stopped after defeating the leader of that region. Noah gives a faint smile, realizing this risky mission might be the perfect opportunity he needed. He plans to use the circumstances of this difficult task to manage to evolve his power without raising suspicions. Already in the forest, one of the guards steps forward with his glowing sword, slicing one of the insect monsters appearing in their path. Kyle commands the group, ordering them to maintain a fast pace and eliminate every creature in that dense area. The men clear the location quickly while extracting valuable materials from the fallen bodies of the monsters on the ground. Some subordinates whisper mockingly, saying No must be scared since he is only a weak warrior. Kyle also mentally questions the reason the patriarch pays so much attention to someone of such a low level there. Suddenly, a warning shout catches the attention of No and Kyle, who look surprised toward the middle of the trees. They find a group of small children who have collapsed and are completely unconscious on the forest floor. No asks what they should do upon noticing the youth seem to be under the effect of the miasma of that region. Kyle answers the mission is urgent, and besides they're going to take the children along so as not to waste more time. The warriors put the children on their shoulders and keep walking quickly toward the center of the dark forest. Bursts of purple energy cut through the air as the atmosphere of the place becomes increasingly dense and frightening. Gigantic roots emerge covered by a toxic mist that greatly hinders the group's visibility. No warns that the concentration of dark energy is rising heavily and that the leader monster must be very close. Suddenly, sharp claws of a colossal creature descend from the treetops, breaking branches with violence. Everyone panics, realizing the sudden arrival of a gigantic beast known as the miasma scorpion. Kyle shouts desperately, ordering the soldiers to protect the children and take them to a safe location right now. The instructor warns the monster's shell is too hard and that they need to plan a tactic before attacking. The beast's terrible glowing stinger rises in the air, preparing a devastating strike toward the rescue group. No widens his eyes and shouts a desperate warning, telling everyone the lethal attack is coming their way head on. The massive attack hits the ground with extreme violence, throwing the soldiers far away amidst a lot of dust. One of the guards is shocked to see the absurd speed and frightening strength of the monster stinger. The group despairs, believing No will be easily defeated since he only has 2 stars of power. The immense creature starts expelling a toxic and acidic gas toward everyone around it. Noah stays calm and activates his hybrid aura, focusing all the energy into his sword's blade. The hero charges at high speed against the giant scorpion's sharp claws without showing fear. He delivers a precise strike, pushing back the giant pincer's attack in a massive shower of sparks. Kyle is impressed by his defense but warns that the monster's real danger is its lethal toxin. The scorpion fires concentrated bursts of green acidic liquid straight at the young master. With acrobatic movements in the air, the hero manages to agilely dodge each of the corrosive shots. The beast attacks fiercely using its stinger, which drips a large amount of deadly toxin onto the ground. No uses his spiritual strength to stop the direct impact of the stinger coming down at high speed. The young man focuses his purple gaze on the creature and decides to go all out to finish the battle quickly. He executes an overwhelming counterattack that knocks the adversary stinger far away with extreme force. One of the soldiers praises the young man's fantastic swordsmanship, even knowing his core is considered weak. The tension rises when the group notes, with horror, that the monster's stinger has just regenerated completely. The scorpion makes a relentless charge, forcing the young master to back away to avoid the attacks. Noah slides his fingers down his blade, channeling the fusion of his 2 energies to empower the weapon. He grips the hilt with both hands, getting ready to deliver a focused strike on the creature. The warrior leaps toward the beast's back, planning to hit the opponent's shell directly. As he delivers the slash, No realizes the monster's natural armor is too hard to pierce. The metal blade slides off without causing real damage, generating only sparks against the dark shell. No grits his teeth in frustration of seeing the absurd resilience of that insect's armored hide. Kyle watches the combat intrigued, wondering how the young man obtained such perfect technique without a tutor. The young master calls to Kyle, asking for immediate help, and the instructor replies promptly that he will back him up. Noah asks his mentor to create an opening on the monster, and Kyle accepts the command, ensuring the action's success. The beast's terrible stinger targets the instructor, who braces himself to receive the violent impact. Kyle lets out a battle cry, gathering his strength to face the direct attack of the giant scorpion. With his heavy sword, the instructor blocks and temporarily immobilizes the adversary's feared stinger. No recognizes his mentor's excellent work and runs toward the beast's body with items in hand. The young man gathers momentum and jumps nimbly directly onto the back of the vulnerable opponent. He lands precisely on top of the enemy's armor, keeping his balance fantastically well. No pulls out the sharp fangs of the venomous spiders he had secretly collected earlier. He He applies all his physical strength to drive the acidic fangs right into the monster's armor plating. The fangs penetrate the tough shell, creating deep cracks that begin to release smoke. The scorpion roars in pain as the concentrated spider toxin begins to take a devastating effect. The corrosive substance begins to quickly melt and soften the creature's hard, protective armor. A vulnerable gap opens in the opponent's armor, making the sword's piercing work easier. The young man reveals to his instructor that he used the fangs of previously defeated spiders as a secret trump card. He explains that the acidic substance of those monsters was the only way to soften the enemy's shell. Kyle finally understands the young man's strategy and gets why he collected those items. The enraged scorpion flashes its multiple red eyes, preparing a violent reaction to the pain. The beast tries to deliver a desperate strike to manage to knock the hero off its back. Green magic circles of immense power appear in the forest sky, ready to be activated by Kyle. The tutor gets ready to cast the third form of his shadow sword, Style, against the enemy. He drives his powerful blade into the ground, releasing a massive amount of purplish magical energy. A colossal barrier rises from the ground, trapping the scorpion and preventing it from making any escape. Noah smiles, realizing the trap is set and that this is the ideal chance to finish the beast off. The young man jumps high up, focusing all the energy of his hybrid aura as he plummets down onto the target. He drops at high speed, aiming his glowing sword straight into the weakened gap of the armor. The final impact generates an explosion of light, destroying the center of the miasma and securing the group's victory. No channels his mixed energy and propels himself from above to deliver an attack against the large scorpion. Inspired by Julia, the hero decides to test a new variation using the power of his hybrid core. He adopts an imposing stance and begins conjuring his newly created sacred demon style for the final blow. Letting out a loud battle cry, the young man activates the dance of light and shadow swords to strike the fearsome opponent. No comes down like a bright meteor, dividing the air with an intense and devastating blast of purple and golden energy. The colossal impact of the technique hits the monster, splitting the weakened shell right down the middle. The giant scorpion is completely defeated, exploding into pieces and spilling its corrosive green essence across the floor. The guards watch everything in shock, unable to believe that a two-star warrior possesses such strength. No reflects in his thoughts that he tried to mimic his sister's technique, but knows he still has a lot of evolving to do. The young man says he did a good job and tells Kyle he will leave cleaning up that area to his responsibility. The instructor asks where he is going, and the young man answers he needs to take care of a personal matter. The hero then walks away from the group, heading alone toward the deepest, darkest part of the dense forest. No remembers that in this era, humanity has not yet discovered the real origin of the miasma outbreaks. However, he knows these phenomena are purposely generated using highly powerful magical tools. The young man approaches a colossal tree emitting a mysterious, faint blue light at the base of its giant trunk. With a quick, precise sword cut, he creates an opening in the wood to investigate what is hidden there. Inside the trunk, the hero finds a glowing ring acting as the catalyst device for the dark energy. No collects the magical item with a satisfied smile, confirming he finally managed to find the device. Suddenly, a desperate scream echoes, straight from the area where the guards and children had stayed behind. No is extremely surprised hearing the call, realizing something terrible is happening to his allies. Without wasting time, the young man turns around and sprints at top speed back to the rescue group's camp. Arriving, he finds the children collapsed on the ground, emitting a dangerous blue energy around their bodies. A guard runs toward him, shouting that the forest monsters have started acting strangely. No gets into a defensive stance and draws his weapon, feeling a massive hostile presence rapidly approaching the area. A gigantic horde of wild creatures appears from all sides, completely surrounding the house's warriors. goblins and wolves charge fiercely, forcing the group to fight defensively to try and protect the injured. The young master unleashes his golden and purple combat aura, preparing to hold back the first wave of attackers. Kyle appears at the exact moment, delivering a powerful strike to help defend No's vulnerable position. The instructor manages to block the beast's advance, while the soldiers celebrate in relief at having been saved. No orders them harshly to keep buying time while he tries to unravel the situation. He focuses his attention on the mystical collar to the neck of one of the unconscious children on the ground. No notes that the item drains the victim's magical energy, a cruel method that ruined his family in the past. Kyle warns that the horde of opponents is too large and they won't be able to hold out much longer. The hero decides to use his hybrid core to interfere with the item's flow and track down who is controlling the spell. He touches the mysterious necklace, causing his powerful spiritual energy to start resonating with the object's magic. No closes his eyes and focuses entirely on tracking the source of the power vibration commanding the creatures. He locates the presence of a masked attacker with red eyes hiding in the shadows and celebrates finding him. The young man tells his allies he will step away briefly and orders everyone to protect the children at all costs. No dashes like lightning through the middle of the battlefield, slicing through wolves and goblins trying to block his path. He runs swiftly into the dense forest, following the trail of the magical energy flow from the controller. The hero moves with such speed, he looks like merely a glowing blur crossing the dark scenery of the woods. No stops in the middle of a clearing and demands out loud that the hidden enemy reveal his presence immediately. Suddenly, the masked attacker leaps from the top of a tree wielding his sword for a surprise strike. The hero raises his weapon and blocks the downward blow, generating an explosion of sparks in the middle of the forest. The two warriors step back, keeping their guard up while the invader watches the young man suspiciously. The villain is surprised, noting that Noah sensed his presence and acknowledges that he truly is a legitimate heir. No demands to know who was responsible for ordering that ambush, but the masked man refuses to give answers. The young hero flashes a defiant smile and assures he will make the opponent talk about everything he knows anyway. They charge at each other, trading rapid sword strikes in a high-speed clash. The attacker is amazed by No's overwhelming power and wonders if that strength comes from his dark core. No smiles and mockingly replies that not even he fully understands how his power works. The hero gets into position, emanating his mixed aura while the attacker tries to analyze No's mysterious ability. The aggressor channels energy into his sword and decides to activate the second form of his darkness style. A violent sequence of red and shadowy slashes is fired off, cutting through the air toward the young master. The villain uses the flying blades technique, creating multiple daggers of shadow energy around himself. He commands the red projectiles, hurling the attacks at high speed to corner and strike the hero. No stays calm and agilely dodges the magical blades scraping past his body. Using his swift swordsmanship, the young man masterfully blocks the remaining charges, trying to hit his chest. No feels the impact and decides to activate his evaluation skill to uncover the opponent's true identity. He discovers the rival is named Darius and has a 5-star core, but the attacker mocks him for backing off. The hero notes that the villain's swordsmanship is weak and realizes he only needs to get close to finish the encounter. Noah charges, running with determination straight at Darius, dodging every single one of the dark magical beams. He masterfully dodges another side attack, continuing to close the distance separating him from the aggressor. With a firm and quick step, the young man gains momentum on the grass, accelerating his lethal advance even more into the clearing. Noah leaps nimbly over the opponent, easily bypassing the entire defense line the villain had set up. In mid-air, he raises his glowing sword, preparing a direct strike against the enemy's unprotected neck. Their blades clash forcefully, generating an intense spiritual pressure between the two combatants at the scene. The attacker smiles beneath his mask, believing the young man was foolish to try such an obvious and predictable attack. However, suddenly a massive explosion of red energy occurs, forcing a tactical retreat from both sides. The villain whips the air with bursts of dark power, trying to keep the young man away with his magical tentacles. No focuses and takes a special stance to activate the first move of his sacred demon style. He builds up his mixed strength, readying a surprise attack with speed far beyond normal. The warrior executes the light shadow shift, moving forward like an untraceable purple streak. Darius panics, recognizing the legendary technique, and tries to defend himself against the surprise charge too late. He spins his body, terrified, trying to raise his metal sword, but realizes the young man's speed is absurd. Appearing right behind the opponent, Noah whispers he was too slow and delivers a heavy strike to his back. The villain lets out a groan of pain and reels in severe pain due to the serious injury he just suffered on his side. He drops his swords on the grass and falls to his knees, totally defeated and deeply hurt after the loss. Darius asks indignantly how a discarded weakling of the Dasker family could know that legendary move. No reflects that his hybrid core allows him to perfectly copy the secret techniques of both his families. He knows mere imitation is not enough, and that the true potential of this mixed force will only come with time. The young man understands that by fully mastering this mixed power, he will become the strongest warrior in the world. No points his blade at the villain's neck and demands to know who ordered this whole ambush. Darius replies with hatred, telling the young man not to claim victory so soon, because the battle isn't over yet. Without hesitating, the attacker pulls out a mysterious flask and quickly consumes a strange blue liquid of power. No watches the scene suspiciously, noticing the aggressor's spiritual energy beginning to change. Darius's body starts expanding grotesquely, cracking the ground as he lets out screams of agony. The young man jumps back, surprised by the violent mutation transforming the enemy's physical shape. The attacker's face deforms, taking on monstrous traits with sharp teeth and a ruthless gaze. Darius transforms into a colossal fiend, roaring with fury and releasing a crushing wave of dark power. No watches the mutation process in shock, realizing the opponent sacrificed his humanity for power. The terrible monster charges like lightning, throwing a devastating punch that makes the forest floor shake completely. The young master is forced to use all his mixed strength to raise his sword and hold back the beast's charge. The impact creates a colossal shockwave that throws debris and destroys part of the vegetation around them. No notes with worry that his weapon won't hold up much longer if he keeps blocking the beast's hits. The monster Darius laughs and challenges the young man to prove how much longer he will manage to resist the fatal attacks. He strikes from above, delivering claws and crushing blows, trying to tear the young master apart at any cost. A bright, deadly red glow comes from the mutant creature's eye, indicating it is about to use more strength. Gigantic claws tear the air with devastating red beams, trying to corner and obliterate the young man. Dodges the destructive strike by mere millimeters, feeling the immense wind caused by the enemy's attack. The gigantic demon Darius lunges with both fists, raised to deliver a crushing blow against the young man. No leaps high into the sky, narrowly escaping the devastating impact of the creature's hands against the ground. In the air and upside down, the hero focuses his attention on the limits of his strength as he prepares to counterattack. He performs a perfect acrobatic move and lands defensively, keeping his sword ready to contain the next advance. No realizes he cannot just keep dodging forever and decides to use a magical item to create an opening. With determination, the young master firmly holds the grip of his weapon, preparing to activate his trump card. Darius lets out a hysterical laugh, mocking a supposed weakness of the hero, and projects himself from above to crush him completely. The monster loudly guarantees that he will end the fight right that instant as he fiercely launches himself at the young man. The beast's enormous monstrous hand descends at high speed, about to completely crush No's body. In the final fraction of a second, the mysterious ring of absolute repulsion that the hero found begins to glow intensely. A powerful pink hexagonal shield materializes, blocking the colossal punch of the mutant creature head. The magical barrier generates a violent repelling shockwave, throwing the gigantic Darius back up into the air. No gives a confident smile upon noticing the opening, realizing that with his hybrid core, he can use his old techniques. The young man leaps toward the monster floating vulnerable in the air, channeling all of his spiritual energy. He focuses his aim on the defenseless opponent in the sky, preparing to execute his most destructive ability. No begins to conjure his powerful sacred demon style, concentrating an immense amount of power into the sword. He raises his weapon, generating a colossal pillar of golden and purple energy that cuts through the sky of that gloomy forest. The young man activates the single blade dual polarity move, delivering a vertical slash of gigantic proportions. The luminous beam hits the monster head, splitting the creature's form and generating an absurd explosion in the scenery. No lands smoothly on the ground and sighs in relief for being saved at the last second by the activation of the magical ring. He analyzes the ring of absolute repulsion, aware that the artifact is capable of nullifying any strike and repelling the aggressor. The young hero decides that it is time to return and check how things are with Kyle and the other guards. Meanwhile, the soldiers of the Dronzer family continue fighting bravely against the massive horde of wild monsters. Kyle grits his teeth, exerting extreme physical effort and mentally laments that he is about to reach his limit. A giant goblin takes advantage of the instructor's exhaustion and raises its spiked club to deliver a finishing blow. The warrior despairs, believing he will be hit head on by the devastating attack of that control beast. However, to Kyle's surprise, the monster's club suddenly stops in the air at the exact moment before hitting him. The man opens his eyes in confusion, not understanding why all the creatures in the forest suddenly stopped attacking. The soldiers look at each other, relieved and surprised as they realize they miraculously survived that terrible battle. No approaches, walking calmly through the clearing, and directly asks if everyone is all right after the confrontation. Kyle confirms, still a bit shaky, that everyone managed to make it out of that violent combat safely by a narrow margin. The young man explains that he defeated the beast controller, leaving the instructor in shock to learn there was a summoner. No confirms that the enemy was real, but says he still needs to find out who hired the mercenary for the ambush. The soldiers observe the children who remain unconscious on the ground, but are now free from the danger of the miasma mist. The young master becomes thoughtful, knowing he needs to act quickly to unmask the true culprit behind everything. Back at the imposing main mansion of the Dronzer family, the hero decides he will start his own secret investigation. No gets angry thinking that innocent children almost perished because of him and swears to catch the mastermind behind the attack. He remembers that young Eve Dronzer acts as the family's main informant and that she might know something important. The young man focuses his determined gaze, knowing he needs to find a solid clue before making his next move. Upon trying to enter a restricted wing of the palace, No is suddenly interrupted by a firm voice ordering him to stop. The blonde brother sees Dronzer, appears, blocking the path, and sternly warns that he does not have permission to enter there. The two brothers stare at each other in the outer courtyard, creating a climate of great tension between the heirs of the house. No knows that C's acts directly as the personal security for Eve, the feared secret informant of the Dronzer lineage. He remembers the information revealed by his maid Lydia, who guaranteed that Eve knows the identity of the mastermind. The hero releases his powerful magical combat aura and firmly orders the blonde brother to get out of his way. C's replies that he is Eve's guard and says he cannot allow the passage of someone emanating such dangerous intent. The blonde yells in anger, making it clear that he does not trust No and will stop him from proceeding at any cost. No regrets the situation and grips the hilt of his sword, preparing to use force against his own brother. The hero draws his metal blade and states with determination that he will force his way through if necessary. Seize unsheathes his own sword, accepting the challenge, and grumbles in annoyance for having no other course of action. Seize advances like lightning, delivering a swift attack with his sword toward the hero in the outer area. The two blades clash violently, producing a massive explosion of bright sparks between them. No resists the great physical pressure of the charge, keeping his eyes sharply focused on his rival's movements. With a quick movement, the hero manages to repel Seize, forcing him to take steps back into the middle of the courtyard. The two combatants briefly distance themselves and stare at each other, preparing for the next exchange of blows. Seize channels a reddish magical mist in his left hand, accumulating the elemental power of earth and rock. He strikes the ground, invoking the stone spear technique, which creates massive sharp spikes sprouting from the soil. No is startled by the speed at which the thick, sharp rocks rapidly advance in his direction. No dodges with agility and uses his metal sword to block and repel his rival's stone projectiles. He destroys the stone stakes with quick slashes, demonstrating his fantastic defensive ability. Seize activates the crushing rock fang magic, creating an immense and heavy stone weapon in his hand. No is surprised to notice the size of the stone sword his opponent wields with such ease. Seize spins rapidly, propelling the enormous rocky weapon for a devastating attack against the hero. The young master defends himself, raising his sacred blade to block the violent impact of the rock sword. They begin an insane sequence of consecutive strikes, making the courtyard tremble with the force of the attacks. The blonde maintains a cold gaze, demonstrating total concentration on his complex combat strategy. Seize executes fast spins and slashes, forcing No to keep backing away to avoid being hit directly. No realizes that the opponent has complex attack patterns and decides to use his evaluation to analyze his rival. The data window reveals that Seize Gelker possesses incredible attributes with an 8-star rating. The young man notices that his core is weaker, but that he compensates for this by combining magic with sword techniques. No decides to face the combat head-on and activates his sacred demon style to use all of his mystical power. He gathers energy and begins the sword dance of light and shadow, emanating an intense golden and purple light. A colossal explosion of mixed energy expands in the clearing, pushing Seize back with extreme force. The opponent is amazed upon feeling the fearsome power emanating directly from the young man's demonic core. Seize slides backward due to the wind generated by the impact of the magical technique. Showing surprise at the strength, he recovers quickly and prepares the shadow lightning style to execute his fastest attack. The blonde advances with the instantaneous movement of black lightning, generating dark sparks around his sword. No recognizes the style, remembering its usefulness in combat thanks to the learning obtained from training. He recalls that his instructor, Kyle, had taught the main characteristics of his family's techniques. The hero prepares himself, knowing that his attack focuses on extreme speed, while Seize notices his knowledge. The blonde smiles slightly, warning that knowing the theory is very different from facing the actual strike in combat. Without showing any sign of hesitation, No challenges the opponent to attack him with all his speed. Seize launches an incredibly fast charge, cutting through the air with a sequence of red and black lightning bolts. The courtyard is taken over by a storm of electric slashes that completely cover No's field of vision. No makes a great physical effort, trying to keep up with the opponent's extremely fast movements. Letting out a loud shout, the hero tries to use his maximum power to manage to dodge and defend against the slashes. A massive impact of electrical energy explodes in the center of the courtyard, lighting up the entire surrounding scenery. A large curtain of light and dust covers the two combatants, ending the frantic sequence of charges. The strong wind disperses the dust that accumulated in the courtyard, revealing the damage caused by the intense combat. No emerges in the center of the smoke, struggling to keep his guard up after taking the full pressure of the attack. His clothes appear torn and damaged due to the force and precision of the electrical strike that hit him. He lets out a groan of pain, feeling the severe physical wear caused by the impact of the enemy technique. No is surprised to realize that not even his sword dance of light and shadow was able to block the full attack. The young man concludes that techniques copied from other warriors have clear limits in their execution power. He understands that he urgently needs to develop his own original techniques using the hybrid core. Suddenly, a firm voice orders them to stop fighting immediately, interrupting the combat in the courtyard. Young Eve Dasker appears at the door of her residence, observing the two warriors with a serious and calm look. She decides to welcome them into her luxurious living room to understand the real motives behind that whole confrontation. Once settled on the salon sofas, the young woman asks directly what the real reason is for the two of them fighting. Cease explains that he acted to protect her, cause Noah arrived at the scene emanating a clear and strong hostile intent. Noah curiously asks why someone as important as her from the Dasker family would need a bodyguard. Eve answers calmly, revealing that she is not very good at physical combat and prefers to avoid fights. Cease asks the reason for No's visit and reminds him that his protege is not participating in the dispute for the throne. The young woman quickly guesses that her brother wants to find out who was responsible for sending the attackers after him. The young man is quite surprised and asks how she managed to figure that out so quickly. Eve displays a mysterious smile and states that there are very few things in this world that she does not know. She says she would love to help her dear little brother, but makes it clear that this information comes at a high price. No quickly realizes that this is a negotiation and directly asks what she wants in exchange. The young woman asks if he knows the legendary Infinite Library, leaving the young master intrigued. That place is a gigantic labyrinth whose size is unknown and holds secrets never revealed. Several adventurers founded a city nearby, but exploring the deeper levels is very dangerous. Eve asks No to bring back a specific artifact from there, known as the Book of Eternal Depths. No recalls that this book revolutionized the theories of magic he knew in his past life. He remembers that this knowledge saved countless lives during the terrible war against the invaders. The hero thinks that obtaining this relic much earlier than expected might be the key to changing the tragic future. No accepts the proposal without hesitation and guarantees that he will bring the mysterious book back to her. The two heirs close the deal with a firm handshake, sealing their partnership from then on. A short time later, a luxurious carriage sets off at high speed toward the destination of his new mission. No travels accompanied by his two maids, who seem quite excited about the long journey. They finally arrive at the grandiose Arcanum, a city that houses the imposing tower of the library. The young man steps out of the vehicle and begins to walk through the busy cobblestone streets of that new place. No knows that the interior of the labyrinth is so complex that he will need an experienced guide, so as not to get lost. He observes the movement of the people around, focused on finding someone who knows the place well. The young master walks through the narrow alleys, catching the attention of some suspicious local residents. The imposing and ancient architecture of the city stands out, revealing the great historical importance of that area. Meanwhile, at the main mansion, Eve relaxes quietly on her sofa while drinking a cup of tea. The house butler opens the doors, announcing the arrival of an important new visitor for the young heiress. Another heir of the family enters the room with slow steps, maintaining a very confident and astute posture. The newcomer, with a smile on his face, reveals that he came there to ask some questions about No. Eve observes her brother with her calm, expressionless gaze, waiting to see what his next move will be. They settle on the salon sofas, starting a silent dialogue loaded with family tension. The young woman comments with disdain that it is very rare to receive his visit in her private quarters. Scar admits that he went there with the intention of asking a favor and borrowing his sister's knowledge. He notices the absence of the bodyguard, and she reveals that C's left to fulfill an urgent mission for the patriarch. Scar breaks into a sinister smile upon realizing that his sister is completely unprotected at that moment. Without showing any concern, Eve drinks her tea and guarantees that her other guards can handle the job. The young man praises her coolness and directly asks what she already knows about No's recent actions. He says he wants to discover the origin of the strength No demonstrated when facing Julia on equal footing. Scar confesses that he is obsessed with unraveling the secret behind his younger brother's sudden evolution of power. The villain adds that No even defeated her attackers, leaving the young woman surprised by so much information. The young woman elegantly sets her cup aside, maintaining her neutral posture in the face of those provocations. Eve states decisively that she will not reveal anything that could directly interfere with the succession dispute. She knows that if she favors one of the brothers, the other candidates will try to eliminate her immediately. Scar changes his expression and threateningly asks if she really intends to refuse to cooperate with him. The young woman counters by asking if he has anything valuable enough to compensate for the risk of losing her position. The redhead lets out a dark smile and repeats the word compensation, as if he were plotting something terrible. He warns that she will understand the price very soon as a sinister silhouette appears right behind her while the conspiracy takes place in the mansion. The day shines brightly over the bustling city of Arcanum. No continues walking with absolute focus through the large local market, ignoring the curious stares of the residents. The young man heads toward his goal, determined to find the answers needed for his journey. No pushes the wooden door of an old shop, making the bell announce his arrival at the establishment. The young man observes the interior with nostalgia, remembering that he finally returned to that special place in his new life. The owner of the magic tool shop, named Ozrek, appears, warning the young man that the place is currently closed. No reveals that he did not come to buy items, but rather to hire him as the official guide to explore the infinite library. The merchant refuses, saying he no longer works as a guide, but the young man insists, because he is the most knowledgeable person there. Ozrek reacts with extreme irritation, telling the young master not to make him laugh with that kind of exaggerated claim. No finds that reaction very strange, knowing that the man used to love that mystical labyrinth of knowledge. The young man directly asks if there is a hidden reason for him to have abandoned the local guide job. Ozrek slams the table in anger, shouting that this problem is not something the young man can solve or help with. The merchant takes a deep breath, seeming to carry a massive emotional weight of suffering and anguish in his chest. I apologize for my previous rudeness, as I have been very stressed and out of patience lately, reveals Ozrek. Suddenly, the small entrance bell rings again, announcing the unexpected arrival of someone else in the shop. No gets a tremendous scare upon seeing that the newcomer is his sister Julia, who asks if he has been well. The beautiful young woman with silver hair waves with a slight smile on her face as she enters the establishment. She explains that she saw him during a mission and decided to follow him, but No realizes that he was actually being watched. The merchant panics upon recognizing young Master Julia as one of the most famous swordswomen in the kingdom. He grabs No's shoulder, calling him a kid, and the young man quickly corrects him, telling the man his real name. The man changes his mind immediately and accepts the job as long as Julia also participates in the expedition. No is suspicious of the sudden change and realizes that he truly has a personal reason to accept this mission. The merchant asks them to follow him and walks toward the deepest quarters of his shop. They enter a dark room where a young woman with purple hair appears lying on a resting bed. Ozrek approaches his beloved wife, looking quite downcast, and begins to explain the terrible event from a month ago. He reveals that she was cursed after being attacked by a terrible red, armored monster in the labyrinth. The man explains that the creature's curse causes the victim to sleep deeply until they eventually pass away entirely. No deduces that the best solution would be to defeat the monster, but the guide laments that all adventurers have failed. Ozrek begs on his knees for Julia to use her extraordinary strength to descend into the labyrinth and save his wife. Julia agrees to help on the condition that No also actively participates in the combat against the terrible monster. She places her hand on her brother's shoulder, explaining that she wants to see his fighting style with her own eyes in the labyrinth. The young man immediately realizes that his sister is still suspicious of the true origin of his new combat abilities. With no way out, No accepts the terms and tells the merchant that they are ready to begin the mystical rescue journey. The man celebrates, looking very confident and determined, guaranteeing that he will do his best to guide them safely. The trio gathers in front of the gigantic library tower, while Julia assures them that her other mission is under control. The young woman focuses her gaze on No and sincerely admits that she is extremely curious to unravel his secret. She recalls the clash of swords, feeling that her brother used a different energy from the family's common demonic core. The young woman warns that he will show the truth in the labyrinth, and No notes how perceptive she is for noticing the power difference. The merchant appears carrying a huge backpack of supplies and apologizes for the delay in joining them. No takes the lead and tells them to leave at once toward the grand entrance gate of the imposing structure. The group enters the main hall, which is completely packed with adventurers and warriors from all over. The guide registers the team at the front desk and warns that the three of them will depend heavily on each other in there. The local warriors comment with pity upon seeing the trio with Ozrek, believing they will be the next casualties of the place. The man guides them to the imposing blue gate, announcing that this is the true entrance to the infinite library. The man pushes the immense stone structure with considerable physical effort to begin the dangerous exploration. The portal opens, revealing a strong and mysterious bluish energy emanating directly from the interior of the labyrinth. The trio crosses the mystical passage under the leadership of the guide, who remains alert to any sign of imminent danger. The young man observes the vastness of the place with gigantic bookshelves, confirming just how expansive the location truly is. The Julia smiles in awe, commenting that she now perfectly understands the extreme need to rely on an experienced guide. The grandiose architecture is filled with floating stairs and complex paths that seem to form an endless maze. Noah walks calmly, but suddenly his eyes widen upon spotting something completely shocking on the tower wall. He comes across an old painting depicting the hero of light facing the terrible invasion of the red monsters. The young man concludes in amazement that there are hidden secrets in that labyrinth that are directly connected to the future of the world. No analyzes the mural, focused on finding any hidden clue that might help him defeat the future invaders. Julia gives a confident smile and warns that it is time for them to keep advancing toward the interior of the labyrinth. The young man confirms the objective, reminding everyone that the priority there is to recover the legendary Book of the Depths. Upon reaching the first floor, the guide explains that the rarest and forbidden tomes are hidden on the lower levels. Ozrek reveals that the artifact is forbidden in the neighboring kingdom and deduces that it must be kept around the 20th floor. No becomes thoughtful upon remembering that this is exactly the deepest floor any adventurer has ever managed to reach. The trio walks in an organized manner and approaches a large blue magic circle drawn in the center of the stone floor. They position themselves over the mystical spell to prepare for the descent toward the next floors of the library. Suddenly, several orc monsters with armor and shields appear out of nowhere, blocking the path of the adventuring group. The guide explains that beasts always guard the access to the next floor and asks if the young master can eliminate them. No calmly guarantees that he will take care of that basic threat as he draws his shining sword from its scabbard. The young man advances with incredible agility, delivering high-speed golden slashes that tear the local monsters apart. He sheathes his blade in a quick and stylish motion, demonstrating a fearsome mastery of swordsmanship to the guide. The fallen figures of the defeated opponents drop to the floor of the mystical library, confirming the young warrior's swift victory. Impressed by such ease, Ozrek hurries the young nobles, saying they need to advance quickly toward their target. The group reaches the 10th floor, and the guide asks for absolute secrecy regarding the hidden shortcuts from then on in the exploration. He manipulates a specific book among the shelves to activate the library's secret passage mechanism. A large secret passage opens, revealing a hidden path that very few people have the knowledge to use. The guide points to the hidden magic circle, explaining that this mystical tool serves as an excellent shortcut. They gather over the mystical spell, which begins to glow intensely with a strong, pulsating bluish energy. The magical transport activates, and the group is enveloped by a colossal pillar of light that performs the journey instantly. The intense glow of the magic dissipates all at once, revealing their arrival in a new and silent area of the tower. Noah shields his face with his hand due to the strong flash generated by the teleportation process to the new floor. The guide reveals that they skipped several levels and are now in the transition from the 19th to the 20th floor. Julia walks ahead with an arrogant smile, deducing that the next elite beasts must be just ahead. They approach a massive circular stone hall, where an enormous blue spell glows menacingly. An immense wave of dark energy emerges from the magic circle, indicating the immediate summoning of that area's guardian. Dozens of dark branches and roots violently sprout from the ground, spreading a terrifying atmosphere throughout the environment. A gigantic tree monster with multiple red eyes emerges, revealing itself as the dreaded guardian of the floor. The guide panics upon noticing that the creature has evolved into an elder lord, much stronger than he remembered. Ozrek screams in terror, saying that overcoming this beast requires several elite groups, but Julia dismisses the concern. The young swordswoman lets out a mocking laugh, asking why the man thinks she needs help. She draws her sword with a pose of superiority and guarantees that her own individual strength is more than enough. Juliet advances at high speed against the giant tree monster, delivering an extremely fast frontal attack. The giant creature responds by whipping its long, sharp, dark branches to crush the invader all at once. The warrior performs fantastic acrobatic dodges, slicing through each of the branches that try to block her advance. She runs along the opponent's own roots, quickly closing the distance to try to strike the main trunk. Julia delivers a precise sword strike right into the center of the monster, generating a massive explosion of dark energy. The charge generates sparks, but barely manages to scratch the hard bark of the opponent, whose red eyes glow with fury. The young woman lands nimbly and admits that the natural armor of that mystical creature is indeed very resistant. Ozrek screams in desperation, warning that the wood is as hard as steel and that a single swordsman will not be able to beat it. Suddenly, dozens of wooden tendrils emerge from the ground, completely surrounding and binding the warrior's legs. Julia is totally immobilized by the monster's vines, which begin to squeeze her body with extreme violence. The elder creature tightens its own wooden claws, preparing to crush the captured opponent all at once. Concerned about the dangerous situation, Noah prepares to intervene and runs toward the combat to save his sister. The branches squeeze with maximum force, generating red sparks as they try to break Julia's physical resistance. The warrior remains calm and activates the fifth form of her shadow combat style, releasing reddish flames. An explosion of fire consumes the vines, and she reveals herself wearing an imposing and mystical armor of dark flames. Noah is completely amazed to see that powerful and rare elemental defensive technique active right before him. Julia wields her sword engulfed in dark flames and prepares to counterattack using the first form of her style. The warrior activates the Shadow Flame Sword Dance technique, channeling all the fire energy into her weapon. The colossal tree guardian tries to react, moving its gigantic branches to crush Julia with extreme brutality. Enveloped in pure flaming fury, the young woman with silver hair leaps with determination toward the opponent's trunk. With quick and explosive slashes, Julia slices the wooden tendrils, reducing the guardian's defense to pieces of ash. She gains momentum in the air and projects herself swiftly, seeking to directly strike the opponent's multiple glowing eyes. The warrior lets out a loud battle cry as she executes a descending slash loaded with all her mystical energy. A colossal burst of red and shadowy fire is released, cutting through the air and destroying everything in its path in the hall. The powerful attack splits the Elder Guardian's trunk exactly in half, causing a violent explosion of steam and smoke. Julia lands with style, arrogantly stating that her flame sword would never be stopped by something as weak as steel. The guide points desperately, shouting a danger warning as he notices that the lethal confrontation has not yet completely ended. A stealthy tendril quickly sprouts from the ground and wraps tightly around Julia's ankle, catching the warrior by surprise. Dozens of new dark roots emerge from the earth and begin to completely envelop the body of the young Daskor master. Julia realizes that plant monsters regenerate very fast unless they are totally incinerated all at once. She is pulled by the roots and ends up fully enclosed within a dark cocoon of tendrils in the center of the hall. No clicks his tongue in worry upon hearing his sister conjure the third form of her special technique inside that cocoon. The young man senses the impending catastrophe and firmly grabs the guide's hand to pull him out of that dangerous area. He runs at top speed, desperately dragging Osrek and shouting for the man to hurry before the detonation. Inside the wooden cocoon, Julia's eyes glow intensely in red, indicating the release of her trump card. A gigantic explosion of fire occurs, destroying the cocoon and spreading an immense, devastating heat wave through the area. A dense red smoke fills the hall as No and Osrek run at high speed to escape the impact of the strike. The flaming shockwave sweeps through the entire corridor, throwing the two adventurers against the floor of the mystical labyrinth. No gets up coughing and deduces that his sister's intention was indeed to incinerate everything to prevent the monster from healing. In the midst of the ashes and red mist, Julia emerges standing victorious after completely erasing the Guardian's existence. The young master walks calmly toward her companions and asks if they should continue the search for the book. The guide watches the scene totally in disbelief and shocked, able to fathom that she eliminated that beast alone. Noah reflects thoughtfully, remembering that the Shadow Flame's style is by far the most powerful in terms of attack strength. He recalls that this technique consumes energy absurdly fast, but admits its power is the greatest in the world. The trio finally reaches the 20th floor, entering a new hall filled with immense shelves full of ancient books. No focuses his attention on the wooden bookcases and suddenly widens his eyes upon spotting a very familiar work. The young man holds the volume with enthusiasm and celebrates aloud for having finally found the Book of the Depths. With the objective fulfilled, Julia warns that they now need to find the mystical creature that cursed the guide's wife. No asks about the location, and Osrek explains that this specific opponent usually hunts freely on this floor. A sudden metallic noise echoes in the silence of the corridor, putting the three adventurers on maximum alert. A fallen book on a small coffee table reveals, on its pages, the drawn image of a powerful warrior. The young man picks up the mysterious volume suspiciously, trying to understand the real secret behind that painting. Suddenly, a bizarre dark hand appears right behind No's head, whispering threateningly that it found him. Pages of the mysterious book begin to flip on their own at high speed, generating a mystical atmosphere in the dark corridor. No feels the overwhelming hostility that flared up behind his back and reacts with extreme speed to dodge the charge. He and Julia draw their swords and take a mixed defensive stance, placing themselves right in front of the frightened merchant. The terrible warrior in gray armor with a monstrous arm emerges from the shadows, revealing himself as the great boss of that area. Osrek points furiously, identifying the opponent as the true demon responsible for his wife's terrible affliction. Noah steps forward wielding his sword, decided to start the combat to eliminate that evil creature from the labyrinth once for all. Julia sternly orders her younger brother to fall back and warns that she will personally handle the dangerous armored boss. The young master leaps, propelled by her shadow flames, shouting that she will take the responsibility of leading the attack. The armored warrior raises his monstrous arm, preparing to deliver an overwhelming counterattack against Julia. The weapons clash violently, generating waves of red flames that illuminate the bookshelves of the grand hall. Julia makes an immense physical effort to try to contain the direct impact of the charge, but feels the opponent's absurd strength. The colossal shockwave pushes the adventurers backward, demonstrating the immense destructive power of that elite opponent. The warrior lands sliding across the floor and knocking over shelves. Impressed by the adversary's absurd physical strength, She kneels with difficulty, coughing from the heavy impact, and concludes with concern that a prolonged fight there will be devastating for them. Julia dodges the danger, leaping at high speed across the gigantic bookshelves of the grand hall. The young warrior runs acrobatically along the walls. Accumulating reddish flames on her metal sword, she launches herself from above toward the gray, armored opponent, delivering a vertical strike of extreme power. The direct impact generates a massive collision of red energy, making the entire structure of the mystical library tremble. Dust scatters due to the pressure, while No and the guide watch the unfolding of that epic battle in the hall. The young man is amazed to note that the terrible armored warrior managed to easily contain such a fast technique. Julia spins in the air, recovering her combat stance while the adversary fiercely advances without showing any fatigue. The young woman lands panting on the stone floor, realizing the enemy's strength is far superior to that of any common monster. Julia strikes the ground with her hand, activating an orange magic circle to summon the second form of her shadow combat style. An immense and devastating tornado of red flames appears under the creature, trying to consume it completely on the spot. The guide believes the combat is over with this attack, but No remains tense, realizing the threat is still active. To everyone's astonishment, the armored warrior cuts the vortex of flames in half, using only the force of his dark blade. Julia is thrown backward due to the enemy's overwhelming counterattack, which dissipates the entire whirlwind of fire. Taking advantage of the recoil, the young woman leaps directly onto the top of the adversary's armor, shouting that she caught him. She drives her flaming weapon forcefully into the opponent's head, seeking to definitively end the confrontation right there. However, she winces in pain upon realizing that the strike was not enough to pierce the rival's mystical armor. The monster reacts with brutality, delivering a heavy punch that throws the warrior far away against the stone shelves. Julia falls violently to the ground, groaning in pain due to the severe impact suffered during the boss's retaliation. No realizes with concern that not even the legendary destructive force of the shadow flames is having an effect on the opponent. The young man panics upon noticing that his sister's charge did not leave even a single scratch on the enemy's armor. The creature's mouth begins to glow intensely in a greenish tone, accumulating a terrifying amount of magic. Julia looks in horror at her own arm, which has been overtaken by a terrible and painful green energy affliction. The armored warrior fires a colossal beam of devastating green energy directly at the fallen opponent on the ground. In the last fraction of a second, No leaps and grabs his sister, saving her from the terrible blast that destroys the entire scenery. The energy beam causes an absurd detonation, generating a column of smoke and debris that rises through the tower's ceiling. The young man gets up and guarantees he will help in the combat, but his sister warns him to be careful with the enemy's touch. Julia explains that any physical contact with that creature will result in a terrible and painful affliction on the body. She laments that due to her injured arm, she will not be able to gather the amount of power necessary to subdue the monster. No looks at his sister seriously and makes an unusual request, leaving the young warrior confused by his attitude. The armored warrior begins to accumulate green mystical energy in his mouth, preparing another lethal blast against them. No asks her to use her strongest attack again, and Julia finds the proposal cruel since she almost fell to that move. Julia accepts the plan, and No guarantees he will focus severing the adversary's cursed arm to create the ideal opening. The two hairs advance side by side in a coordinated manner, combining red flames with powerful electric bolts. Julia executes her dance of flames, while the young man activates the hybrid version of his sacred demon-style technique. They hit the enemy simultaneously with a devastating sequence of golden light and shadow fire slashes in the hall. The collision of opposing forces generates a large multicolored explosion that lights up the entire 20th floor of the library. A colossal pillar of fire and electricity consumes the central area of the combat, spreading destruction across all the shelves. The siblings retreat, sliding smoothly across the floor, keeping their guard up as they watch the middle of the smoke. They remain on guard side by side, waiting anxiously to confirm if the combined technique had any effect. However, the terrible armored warrior roars fiercely, emerging from the flames totally intact and furious to fight. The two are shocked to confirm the creature's absurd resistance, which advances swiftly to deliver a new strike. The enemy delivers a vertical slashing attack, but the siblings use their weapons to contain the charge with extreme precision. Julia leaps acrobatically, trying to find a vulnerable spot in the rival's armor during the frantic exchange. The opponent defends masterfully, deflecting the attacks with his large shield and forcing the siblings to fall back in the hall. No blocks a heavy charge, feeling all the physical pressure of the blow and making an immense effort not to give in. Upon noticing that her younger brother is about to be crushed by the rival, Julia shouts desperately for him to dodge. The young woman channels her last strength and activates the second form of her Shadow Flames style to protect her companion. A large barrier of golden fire rises between No and the enemy, softening the impact of the monster's devastating attack. The gray armored boss is not intimidated and goes back to concentrating his green magic in his mouth, preparing another deadly beam. Julia shouts No's name in desperation upon realizing that the enemy's lethal blast is aimed directly at the young man. No prepares his sacred demon style, concentrating an immense amount of energy into his sword. With total focus, the young master activates the dual polarity blade technique, releasing his full attack potential. An overwhelming impact of light hits the gray, armored monster, generating a colossal explosion in the stone hall. No is quite panting and exhausted, feeling the tremendous physical toll the attack took on his new body. The young man manages to strike the opponent directly in the head, making the mystical energy pierce the enemy's helmet. The monster resists and counterattacks with extreme violence, forcing the young hero to try to defend himself at all costs. No realizes the danger of the situation and grits his teeth hard upon noticing is about to be completely overpowered. Suddenly, a colossal tornado of black and red fire appears in the clearing. Trying to contain the adversary's advance, Julia appears exhausted and warns that she used the remaining power to save her brother's life and settle the debt with him. The young man notes with concern that even his strongest strike failed and that his sister's core is completely drained. Faced with such enemy resistance, No wonders if the only viable alternative left is to retreat from the battle. The immense gray, armored creature continues advancing imposingly toward the two siblings who can barely fight. No looks to the horizon frightened and considers where they will really have to face another monster in that place. Suddenly, a mysterious voice resounds, criticizing the lack of refinement and technical imperfection of his hybrid strike. The young man remains absolutely silent, trying to locate the true origin of that strange and powerful spiritual presence. An intense golden light begins to appear in the air as the voice explains that No's energy is mixed and unbalanced. The young master draws his sword and demands to know who is speaking and what mysterious place he has just entered. The voice reveals that he is the successor to the divine core and advises the hero to finish the dangerous combat with a single strike. Meanwhile, in the real world, the terrible monster raises his massive dark blade, preparing a finishing attack against No. Seeing her brother standing still and unresponsive, Julia shouts desperately, asking what he is planning to do at that moment. Suddenly, a blue system screen appears, confirming the awakening of the successor and unlocking the hero's divine core. No tightly grips the hilt of his sword while channeling the second style of his new and powerful divine light technique. A colossal pillar of golden energy envelopes the young man's body, completely illuminating the dark scenery of the labyrinth. His eyes glow intensely as the hero activates the technique capable of tearing the skies with its new luminous energy. A devastating sequence of golden slashes cuts through the air with extreme speed, generating a spectacle of power in the hall. The luminous attacks hit the carapace of the gray, armored monster, which begins to crack under the impact of the sacred power. A mysterious blonde presence smiles, realizing that this is the true and hidden power of the sacred demonic core. No takes an imposing stance and warns the enemy that he now intends to return twofold. All the pain they suffered, the hero leaps toward the monster, accumulating blades of pure golden electricity around his metal sword. A new system window activates, indicating that the challenge against the boss has been formally accepted by the young warrior. No is suddenly transported to a vast white space where his sword of yellow flames shines intensely. The young man observes the weapon, intrigued, and deduces that he indeed managed to inherit the entirety of the legendary original divine core. An immense golden silhouette begins to materialize before him, emanating an aura of pure divinity and supreme power. An imposing and handsome knight with long blonde hair and golden armor appears before the amazed young master. The hero asks who he is, and the entity introduces himself as Zex Valmuth, the ancient bearer of that very same divine core. The knight explains that the sacred and demonic cores that No knew are actually just defective byproducts. He recounts that in the era of the gods, invaders from other worlds appeared, and the divine core was created to fight them. Zex laments that after a long war, humanity was ultimately defeated due to internal conflicts created by men themselves. He reveals that the other factions feared the overwhelming power of the divine core and decided to eliminate all its bearers. To prevent this power from being reborn, the original force was divided, giving rise to the demonic and sacred cores. No understands that the two energies were one, and Zex confirms that this is why he was able to inherit the divine core. The young man asks if they would have defeated the invaders in the past had humans not committed that betrayal. With a serious look, the ancient warrior guarantees that they would have wiped out all enemy forces with extreme ease. No clenches his fist in determination, thinking that with this legendary power, he will finally be able to change the world's tragic fate. Zex warns that with the young man's current core level, this is impossible, and that he needs to defeat enemies to evolve. The young master breaks into a confident and arrogant smile, showing that he is more than ready to accept the challenge. The ancient hero returns the smile and decides to begin No's training with a relatively simple task. Zex orders the young master to prove his worth by first eliminating that insignificant enemy before him in the real world. Back in reality, No releases an immense amount of golden flames that envelop the hall at high speed. The young man advances with determination and clashes his divine blade directly against the sharp claws of the powerful opponent. With a focused gaze, the hero guarantees that this time he will cut off the monster's arm once and for all. The two warriors collide again in the middle of the grand hall, while books fly everywhere with the wind. Noah uses his mystical energy's golden blades to block and immobilize the adversary's massive arm. The system reveals that the divine technique controls 6 blades of light that serve for both attack and defense. Using the incredible speed of his new ability, the young man manages to sever the gray, armored monster's arm. Ozrek watches everything, completely shocked to notice that the young master used the very light to slice the beast. The opponent's arm drops to the stone floor while the golden and purple aura continues, emanating from the young hero's body. Without wasting time, No advances quickly and delivers a deep thrust directly into the armored warrior's chest. The young man breaks to a slight smile and mockingly states that the game has finally turned in their favor in that battle. A colossal explosion of golden energy pierces the opponent's armor, illuminating the entire library area. The terrible creature lets out a monstrous roar of extreme pain upon feeling the purifying power consume its body. With the final vertical slash, No takes down the terrible adversary and celebrates the downfall of his first major enemy. The body of the terrible gray, armored warrior collapses completely destroyed and lifeless onto the library floor. The hero takes a deep breath, observing the result of the confrontation as he tries to calm the flow of his mystical energy. Suddenly, a final and dangerous wave of green energy appears at the location, catching the young master's immediate attention. Julia perceives the imminent danger and shouts desperately for her younger brother to dodge the surprise attack. A colossal beam of green acidic energy is fired directly at the hero, who was caught off guard on the ground. Noah reacts quickly and activates the shield of his light blade's technique to try to contain the impact of the green blast. The golden shield collides with the powerful acid burst, generating immense corrosive smoke around the young man. The collision of the two mystical forces generates a colossal detonation that destroys the remaining bookshelves in the area. The green smoke slowly begins to clear, revealing the damage caused by that final desperate attack. To everyone's relief, No emerges standing completely unharmed in the middle of the dust, showing the strength of his mystical defense. Julia watches the scene completely in shock, unable to understand how he emerged from that strike without a single scratch. No raises his shining sword and warns that he will now finish the monster off once and for all with his energy. The young man unleashes the final luminous attack, and the creature takes the full destructive impact of that release of power. The beast's armored body shatters under the immense amount of energy from the young hare's sacred technique. The impact dissipates the evil aura, and the armored warrior falls completely destroyed amid the rebel. A system screen pops up, confirming the victory and announcing that his divine core level has risen to level 2. The young man reads a congratulatory message sent by Zex and realizes with surprise that the ancient hero continues to guide his steps. The system warns that the divine core grows through battles and advises Noah to use his new mystical power well. Noah clenches his fist thoughtfully upon realizing that fighting is the key to evolving, and he celebrates having obtained a new technique. Still trembling, Osrek runs toward the young master, asking in disbelief if he really defeated that monster. Julia approaches and confirms that the enemy is gone, pointing out that the terrible affliction has also begun to vanish from there. The young woman looks at her own arm in relief, noting that the dark marks of the infection have completely faded from her skin. Julia tells the guide that his wife must also be cured, and Osrek cries tears of happiness, suggesting they return right away. Walking over to her brother, Julia comments in surprise that he looks nothing like the weak warrior from before the test. The young woman focuses her serious gaze on the young master and directly asks where he learned such fantastic swordsmanship. Seeing his silence, she deduces that he cannot speak about it and explains that there are different styles of using the core. She details that the magic sword style serves as the basic foundation for all warriors of the Daskor lineage. She cites the Shadow Flame style, which is entirely focused on maximizing the user's physical attack power. The young woman also mentions the Shadow Lightning style, whose main focus is extreme speed in strikes. Julia finishes by citing the Abyssal style, which is a mystical technique specialized in tricking and confusing opponents. She points out that No's style does not belong to any of those schools, and asks what her brother is hiding from everyone. Two siblings exchange deep and silent glances, creating an atmosphere of mystery and mutual distrust between them. Julia gives up on pressing the young man and breaks into a slight smile, deciding to set her doubts aside for now. She walks away, saying she is looking forward to the day they put their demonic cores to the test in a real fight. Walking with Kyle, the hero holds the Book of Eternal Depths, which he intends to hand over to obtain information from Eve. Upon arriving at the young informant's room, Noah opens the door and finds the place totally ransacked and destroyed. Cease appears furious and reports that he made a mistake by leaving the mansion, as young Eve ended up being kidnapped. The blonde warrior reveals that the one responsible for the incident is their brother Scar, who was after secret data about Noah himself. Cease explains that Scar probably kidnapped Eve to force her to reveal all the information she possesses. No smiles slightly upon realizing and confirming that the malicious Scar was the true mastermind behind the attackers. The young man decides they will save the informant, but the guard is startled to note that he wants to challenge Lord Scar. Noah shows a mysterious smile and tells his ally not to compare their confrontation to a dispute between equals. With a cold look, the hero guarantees that what is about to start will be merely a one-sided and ruthless retaliation. Feeling guilty, C says he will go along to fix his own mistake, leaving the soldier surprised by the support. The guard suggests they wait for reinforcements, but no counters, saying there is no time to gather more soldiers. Gripping his weapon, the young man states that the swords of the Daskor family do not break just from being outnumbered. The soldier accepts the orders, and No asks him to ensure the absolute security of the mansion while they are away. demonstrating deep loyalty. The man guarantees with the determination that he will protect the master's house no matter what. With the plan decided, the young master takes the lead and orders an immediate attack on the treacherous Scar's base. No and C's mount their horses and set off at high speed, crossing a dirt road toward the rescue location. C's hopes for Eve's safety, but comments confidently that she is strong enough not to be easily overcome. No notices his great confidence and curiously asks why the blonde brother decided to become her guard. C's reveals that his own demonic core was always considered the weakest among all the family's heirs. He confesses that his power was inferior to that of his brothers, which put him at a great disadvantage in the dispute for the house. The young man explains that to compensate for this weakness, he sought to learn new combat tactics and refine his swordsmanship. No finally understands the situation, realizing that this was why he could not predict his brother's strikes. C's guarantees with determination that he will keep fighting to get stronger and that he will protect Eve at all costs. The two heirs finally reach the entrance of the residence, and No warns that they need to locate Eve first. They dismount, and the young master seriously warns that they must not spare any enemies in their way. No accumulates his powerful mystical energy around his legs, preparing to perform a demonstration of strength. With an extremely violent movement, the young man delivers a devastating kick against the massive metal gate of the place. The heavy iron gate is totally destroyed and collapses amidst a gigantic and dense curtain of dust and smoke. The two brothers enter the property at high speed, sliding across the courtyard with their swords ready for combat. They are immediately surrounded by a huge number of masked soldiers who were already awaiting the Doe's arrival. C's quickly recognizes the enemy group and tells the young man that this is Scar's dreaded unit of elite mercenaries. The masked warriors surround the escaped Rotes, while the blonde warns that those mercenaries are very skilled. The squad leader mocks the situation, laughing at the fact that the two fools attacked so directly. No activates his purple combat aura and coldly warns that he has no time for henchmen, ordering them to bring Scar there. The mercenary leader becomes quite irritated with No's arrogance, stating that the young man does not understand the situation. One of the mercenaries suddenly appears behind the hero's back, trying to deliver a sneaky sword strike to No. Without even looking back, the young man turns at the last fraction of a second and easily blocks the enemy attack. No executes a circular counterattack movement, throwing the masked assailant far away with extreme brutality. The leader draws his massive white sword and swears they will have no mercy against anyone who dares challenge Scar. The young master slides a jolly across the courtyard grass, accumulating electricity around his sacred blade. No clashes head on against the mercenary leader's sword, generating a large explosion of electrical sparks in the courtyard. While No faces the commander, C's leaps into the air to contain the advance of the rest of the mercenaries on the battlefield. The villain leader makes a huge physical effort, trying to hold back the terrible pressure No's sword exerts on him. C's lands in the center of the grass and finds himself surrounded by dozens of enemies who advance against him in a coordinated manner. The blonde leaps with incredible agility, escaping the encirclement and simultaneously blocking the enemy's mid-air charges. The warrior decides to get serious and begins to come the third form of his family's shadow lightning style. The hero summons the cutting brilliance of the dark thunder, channeling an immense amount of electricity into his sword. A colossal beam of blue electrical energy tears through the courtyard grass, striking the opponents with devastating force. Scar's masked soldiers are electrocuted and thrown far away by the relentless impact of C's powerful magic, standing among the defeated adversaries. The blonde exhibits his electrical aura and challenges any other enemy to come fight. No watches the scene from the corner of his eye and feels relieved to realize he can leave that side in C's care. The mercenary leader tries to take advantage of the moment of distraction and advances, shouting for the hero not to underestimate them. With a nimble defensive movement, No blocks the attack and makes a scroll fly high into the sky above the battlefield. The paper scroll begins to glow intensely in red flames, activating a gigantic summoning spell in the air. The young man looks at the ground and, startled, notices the appearance of a huge and threatening red spell mark. The enemy leader reveals that is a powerful Seek technique developed specifically against his family. He leaps at the young master, delivering an attack charged with a dense and dangerous purple demonic smoke. No concentrates to the maximum, and his eyes glow purple as he tries to read his rival's next move. The system reveals that the opponent's name is Vault Grave, a formidable warrior who masters a dangerous hidden technique. To defend himself, No quickly begins to conjure the second form of his powerful divine combat style. However, the young man feels a sudden and terrible physical resistance. When trying to channel his core strength into the sword, he lets out a groan of pure pain and frustration as he notices that his mystical power is being mysteriously blocked. Vault Grave takes advantage of the opening and delivers a monstrous diagonal slash that throws No back with extreme violence. No realizes with horror that the opponent's secret technique was able to completely seal his demonic core. The villain mocks the situation, warning the young man not to believe he could defeat them with just ordinary swordsmanship. Seize runs to No's side in the center of the red magic circle, ready to help his younger brother in combat. The blonde man analyzes the tactical situation and points out with concern that they are at a serious numerical disadvantage in that courtyard. He laments the existence of such a problematic and annoying spell capable of sealing their dark energy. Seize orders No to go forward and save Eve while he takes responsibility for holding off the enemies alone. The blonde tells his brother to stop worrying and orders him to go finish off Scar quickly to bring the young woman back safely. No accepts Seize's request with a look of absolute seriousness, fully trusting his older brother's abilities. The young master dodges the first opponents and runs at high speed toward the interior of the residence. He passes like a blur right through the blockade of masked soldiers, moving forward without looking back in the outer courtyard. Seize breaks into a confident smile and warns that even with his core sealed, he can still use his powerful earth magic. The blonde strikes his foot on the ground and rises into the air, instantly creating a colossal stone column under his feet. He activates his stone path magic, generating an immense rocky stake that advances, destroying the courtyard scenery. Seize yells, telling his allies to search the secondary residence, as it is by far the most suspicious location in the area. Vault Grave notices the maneuver and desperately orders his men to pursue No at all costs in the hallway. However, Seize summons dozens of sharp rock spikes that sprout from the ground, pinning down the enemies trying to pass. The commander of the mercenary group clicks his tongue in irritation upon seeing his elite unit contained so easily. He observes with fury the forms of his subordinates, trapped on the immense stone spears, covering the entire lawn. Vault Grave focuses his icy gaze on Seize, realizing he will need to defeat the young blonde if he wants to continue the hunt. Seize points his sword toward the mercenary leader and challenges him to focus on a real combat against him at once. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Scar interrogates Eve and demands to know the secret behind No's new strength. Tied to a wooden chair, the young woman calmly replies that his questions will always be useless and in vain. Scar smiles sadistically and shows the captured maids, asking if she truly does not care about their fate. Eve answers with extreme contempt, stating that having a cowardly piece of trash as a younger brother is an unbearable humiliation. Scar is infuriated by the response but is interrupted upon hearing a deafening combat noise coming from the outer courtyard. Eve smiles, deducing that No has finally arrived, and Scar mocks his brother for having the audacity to attack so directly. The villain focuses his green, hate-filled gaze, demonstrating that he does not fear the advance of the youngest Daskor heir. Eve proudly comments that cowardly methods do not suit No because the boy possesses the most important thing of all. Scar lets out a sarcastic laugh, claiming that he can finally personally test the young man's true combat strength. Annoyed by his hostage's audacity, the redhead draws his metal sword, promising he will make that insolent woman pay. Suddenly, the door is is destroyed, and No-Ao invades the room triumphantly, sliding across the floor with his weapon in hand. The young man takes a guard stance and calmly announces that he came to that dangerous hideout just to rescue his sister. No raises his sword of light and shadow, staring intently at the figure of Scar in the center of the luxurious wooden hall. In her usual calm and mocking tone, Eve smiles at her brother and points out that it took him quite a long time to get there. Scar points his silver blade directly at No's chest and yells his younger brother's name with deep hatred. Scar takes a step forward with an enraged expression and sharply asks if No really wants to settle this. The redhead smiles mockingly and challenges the young man, questioning if he truly believes he is capable of defeating him in combat. No maintains an extremely calm countenance and replies shortly and ironically, confirming that he is certain of it. Scar completely loses control and fiercely advances, delivering an attack charged with dense malevolent energy. The two brothers exchange quick and precise strikes in the middle of the large hall, while bookshelves and books tumble around them. The impact of the combat is so colossal that the glass window explodes, throwing the hairs out into the external courtyard. They continue exchanging feared swords in mid-air as they plummet from the top of the palace at high speed. The combatants land nimbly on the courtyard lawn and quickly back away to regain their fighting breath. No activates his mystical evaluation to analyze in detail the true potential and power level of his red-haired brother. The system reveals that Scar possesses impressive attributes and that he is the founder of the dangerous abyssal fighting style. The young man calmly asks what Scar's real motive was for sending mercenaries and even using children against him. The redhead breaks into a sarcastic smile and cynically replies that the reasons for his actions should be obvious. Overtaken by fury, the villain advances, delivering an extremely violent vertical strike covered in purple smoke. The swords collide with force, generating a large explosion and pushing both warriors back to opposite sides. No realizes with relief that his course seal was undone upon leaving the range of the mercenary leader's spell. Scar attacks furiously, shouting that he does not accept the fact that a weak piece of trash like No received the patriarch's recognition. The young man raises his sacred blade, managing to block the relentless sequence of furious strikes delivered by his rival. The redhead yells with a psychopathic expression, demanding that his younger brother fall right there during that family duel. No dodges with a perfect acrobatic move, leaping over his opponent and avoiding Scar's lethal side slash. He lands with quick steps, placing a safe distance between himself and his adversary to plan his strategy. The young master analyzes his brother's charges, noting that he mixes feats with real attacks to confuse the defense. Scar warns that Noah will serve only as a stepping stone to his victory and begins to gather an immense amount of purple mist. The villain prepares and begins to conjure the third form of his feared, abyssal style to eliminate the young man. He invokes the Night March of the Ghost Legion, creating a colossal army of skeleton warriors in the courtyard. The bone monsters fiercely advance against No, who observes the enemy army with extreme calmness and suspicion. The young man positions himself and begins to wonder if that skeleton horde serves merely as a distraction from his adversary. One of the skeletons leaps, delivering a descending blow with its old sword toward the young master's head. The hero agilely dodges the direct attack, keeping his guard up against the other skeletons surrounding him. He raises his weapon and blocks the metal swords of the bone monsters, containing the horde's joint charge. No notices with intrigue that the creatures are not ordinary illusions, but rather magical summonings with real physical mass. Seeing more monsters rushing in his direction, the hero decides he needs to clear the battlefield quickly. No takes a spectacular leap, dodging the ground encirclement and accumulating light energy in his powerful sword. In mid-air, the young man begins to conjure the second style of his divine technique, concentrating all his strength into a single point. The warrior activates the Twin Sky rending technique, releasing a colossal and devastating explosion of golden light. The golden slashes cover the entire courtyard lawn, instantly slicing and destroying dozens of skeleton warriors. No slides smoothly across the stone floor as the smoke from his divine technique begins to dissipate in the area. The young man complains about the annoyance as he notices that the undead begin to regenerate and rise from the ground again. He activates his hybrid aura, concentrating yellow and purple electrical currents around his combat boots. Noah advances like lightning through the middle of the horde, slicing each opponent with high speed, precise slashes. The young man ignores the skeletons and advances directly against Scar, delivering a surprise attack focused on his red-haired brother. Scar defends against the strike and shouts furiously, asking if the hero truly believes he is capable of defeating his entire army. They exchange swift blows, while No shifts his rival's focus and tears a large gap in his armor's defense. Several skeletons try to attack the young man from behind, but he tracks their presence with total ease in the courtyard. With a perfect spin of his sword, the hero delivers a circular attack that shatters all the bone aggressors. No forcefully clashes his blade against Scar's, generating a large impact of purple and golden energy between them. The young man backs away, sliding across the courtyard, and sharply warns his brother that he does not care about the amount of trash sent his way. No executes a wide slash in the air, firing semicircular bursts of light that advance toward the redhead's position. The young man prepares for the next advance and guarantees his rival that his weak tricks will make no difference. He repeats the swift movements, unleashing more blades of golden light to shred the skeletons around him. Scar is hit by the shockwave and falls to his knees on the ground, letting out a groan of pure pain and extreme physical exhaustion. The two adversaries stared each other panting from a distance in the middle of the courtyard, completely destroyed by the power explosions. The redhead drives his sword deep into the soil, channeling all his dark energy directly into the ground. A terrible rift of purple energy tears through the earth, creating sharp spikes that sprout from the soil toward the hero. No is startled by the speed of the earth attack and tries to quickly position himself to avoid being struck. Suddenly, a colossal bone dragon emerges, destroying the ground on the command of the furious Scar. Scar points his sword in a rage and orders the terrible creature to attack to tear the hero apart. No observes the immense skeleton dragon as a powerful energy begins to rise around him. Displaying a confident smile, the young man decides it is time to test his new mystical ability. A system screen reveals that his divine core has leveled up and unlocked a rare ocular technique. The young hero positions himself and prepares to activate the fifth form of his divine combat style. His eyes shine intensely as he activates the special ability to control sacred darkness. Noah leaps toward the huge monster, delivering an extremely powerful golden energy slash. The young man floats in the air above the dragon, roaring, focused on performing his next combat move. He plummets like an electrical bolt toward his adversary, emanating a purple and golden aura. The hero focuses his shining gaze directly on the yellow eyes of the fearsome bone dragon. Noah lands precisely on the creature's head, channeling his mystical power into its skull. The young man remains standing atop the beast, leaving Scar completely shocked by that bizarre scene. Not understanding anything, the villain desperately screams, demanding that the monster destroy the hero immediately. No explains that his ocular technique deciphers the enemy's movement and assumes absolute control. He declares that the monster is now his servant, and the redhead curses in irritation, telling him to stop with the tricks. Furious, Scar decides to attack on his own, preparing the first form of his abyssal style. The villain fires a powerful projectile of darkness that pierces the dragon, generating purple smoke in the courtyard. An immense and destructive explosion of dark energy occurs, destroying the surroundings of the mansion. Scar launches himself for a direct sword attack, while No dodges masterfully and with ease. The hero repeats that the beast now obeys only him, leaving his brother desperate in the middle of the fight. The redhead channels all his shadowy mist into the blade, insisting on using his abyssal slash technique. he conjures a powerful spear of concentrated darkness that rapidly advances against the young man. The clash of the attack generates yet another large detonation of purple energy that sweeps across the entire stone courtyard. Suddenly, Scar is struck by a swift slash to his back and spits blood, falling injured to the ground. Quite hurt, the villain admits he has no other choice but to appeal to his last resort. He pulls out a small metal flute and begins to play it, emanating a shadowy mist around himself. An immense dark portal surrounded by blue lightning opens in the air, leaving the young man intrigued by the magic. Young Eve emerges, crossing the magical passage escorted by two dangerous masked guards. Scar flashes a wicked smile and asks if his brother truly thought he would be able to save her from there. One of the mercenaries positions his sword at Eve's neck, forcing a very tense hostage situation. No becomes extremely furious and calls his brother a coward upon seeing her life in serious danger. The villain guarantees that he will release the hostage, only after managing to brutally eliminate the hero. No grits his teeth in irritation, trying to find a way to resolve the situation without hurting Eve. Suddenly, a colossal pillar of red light plummets from the heavens, breaking the ground between the brothers. Scar backs away, startled by the force of the explosion, unable to understand who dared to interfere there. The haired Damien majestically appears in heavy armor and a shield, placing himself right in front of Eve. Scar panics upon recognizing his older brother, and No observes the arrival of the powerful ally. Damien harshly warns that Eve declared neutrality, and that the rules of the dispute forbid attacking her. The redhead furiously fires back, trying to justify his desperate actions to win the succession. With his red eyes shining, Damien guarantees he will eliminate Scar for violating the laws of the house. The villain falls to his knees on the ground, cursing in rage as he realizes his plans have completely failed. The older brother focuses his intense gaze and warns the redhead not to try any foolishness there. He reminds everyone that this is a dispute of life or death focused solely on obtaining the core of another. No firmly guarantees that he will not allow anyone to get in the way of his path to victory. Damien points out that interfering in the dispute is also a crime and decides the outcome of that combat. He orders No and Scar to fight with everything they have, while he closely observes the result as a judge. The young master draws his sword again and invites his red-haired brother to resume the duel in the courtyard. He ironically asks if his rival can fight without needing to resort to hostages and children. Scar becomes completely infuriated upon noticing that everyone continues to mock his abilities. Scar concentrates and decides to conjure the seventh form of his dangerous abyssal style in the courtyard. He activates the shadow vest technique, covering his entire body with dense purple smoke. The redhead advances in a rage, promising that this time he'll cut the hero into 1,000 pieces without mercy. No realizes that his rival's style is focused on confusing the mind and perception of the opponent. The young man concludes that pressing the attack without giving any opening is the best tactic for victory. The two hairs violently clash in the center of the courtyard, generating electrical sparks and wind. Scar summons shadow clones to attack from multiple sides and try to confuse the young man's defense. No reacts quickly, activating his twin sky rending technique with his powerful golden aura. A colossal explosion of luminous and purple energy expands, destroying the adversary's clones. No is greatly startled to note that his brother managed to block his most powerful divine attack. Without giving the hero time to breathe, the redhead prepares the fourth form of his feared abyssal style. He conjures the invisible slash strike, emanating red and dark flames across his entire blade. Scar delivers the secret charge, cutting through Noah's defense, who tries to protect himself from the lethal impact. The young master makes an enormous physical effort to block the attack, pressing against his sword of light. Noah suffers a slight cut on his cheek and realizes that empowered strike is impossible to defend against. The young man is thrown backward while trying to regain his balance on the training ground. Scar fiercely advances, shouting that the hero will not be able to escape his relentless charges. They exchange new swift attacks, generating a spectacle of golden and purple lights across the scenery. No lets out a groan of fatigue under the heavy pressure from Scar, who continues pressing without stopping. The redhead gets annoyed upon realizing that his younger brother miraculously avoided suffering a fatal wound. No positions himself firmly, raising his sword to contain his rival's terrible sequence. Colossal pillars of golden light emerge from the ground, breaking the courtyard stones with extreme violence. The young man agilely leaps to escape the immense shockwave sweeping across the entire field of combat. He notes that the illusion swordsmanship and his rival's great defensive power are his greatest strengths. No questions why someone so talented resorted to cowardly methods in the dispute for the house. Scar shouts that he was rejected by their father, who considered his talent for illusions useless to the family. The villain explains that his resentment drove him to create the abyssal style to prove his true worth. Scar remembers with bitterness the day the patriarch completely ignored him, disregarding his efforts. Overtaken by hatred, the redhead guarantees that the only alternative left for him is to win at any cost. With his face stained with blood, he swears he will make their father recognize his power through this war. The villain says he does not mind dirting his hands with evil as an immense red pillar arises. Scar orders the end of the dialogue and commands the young man to serve as fuel for his great victory in the dispute. The redhead prepares to conjure the ninth form of his abyssal style, releasing an enormous energy. He invokes the destruction of the dragon's sepulchre, creating an immense red flame monster in the air. The colossal creature of red fire hovers in the cloudy sky, spreading terror throughout the property. The red flame dragon dives at high speed, directly against No's position on the ground. An absurd detonation happens in the center of the courtyard, destroying the walls and the floor with extreme force. No manages to protect himself by creating a spherical shield of golden light to contain the immense explosion. The young man emerges standing in the middle of the golden sparks, keeping his sword ready for the final confrontation. The immense dragon of dark and red flames hovers right behind Scar, demonstrating fearsome power. No realizes that his demonic core has reached its critical energy limit and is beginning to strain. Scar smiles, saying that his brother has no chance of winning relying solely on his ordinary ability. Without hesitating, the young man places his hand inside his clothing, searching for his secret trump card. The redhead widens his eyes, extremely surprised to notice the mysterious object that No is holding. The young man reveals that he solidified his own accumulated toxin to use it as a power stimulant. No places the stabilized toxin in his mouth, swallowing the dangerous item without showing any hesitation. Scar screams in terror, asking if the young man has gone mad for ingesting something capable of making him lose control. Overtaken by fury, the hero begins to release an absurd amount of golden and purple energy through all his wounds. Noah smiles, stating that the toxin will act as perfect fuel to recover his strength. The system screen appears, confirming that his divine core has risen to level 20 and unlocked a new strike. Noah remembers his past as Zenon and swears he will never allow tragedy to repeat itself in this life. He accumulates energy in his blade and decides to conjure the second form of his powerful divine style. The hero activates the brilliance of light and shadow, firing an immense amount of electrifying energy. He executes the descending slash while Scar's fearsome red flame dragon fiercely advances. The two colossal techniques clash in the courtyard, and No's attack slices the fire dragon in half. The colossal impact generates a violent explosion of mixed energy that completely destroys the scenery. The tremendous shockwave throws both warriors back into the middle of the ruined courtyard. An immense dome of destructive energy expands in the clearing, glowing with great intensity. A gigantic cloud of dust and debris is launched into the heavens due to the absurd power of the strike. Damien acts fast and uses his giant metal shield to protect his sister from the strong blast wind. An immense mushroom-shaped smoke cloud rises above the mansion, marking the end of the colossal confrontation. The older brother waits for the smoke to clear, revealing the courtyard entirely devastated by the clash. Damien and Eve observe the situation with looks of surprise, not knowing who survived the detonation. The wind dissipates the smoke, revealing the defeated Scar kneeling, while the young master remains standing. No points his blade at his rival's neck and calmly confesses that he does not wish to take his life. The hero orders the traitor to surrender, but the redhead only keeps his head down in absolute silence. Scar pretends to accept defeat, promising to hand over the demonic core, and No calmly accepts the agreement. Suddenly, No's combat instincts scream in alert upon noticing his brother's wicked expression. Before the young man can react, the villain's silver sword pierces his abdomen with fury. Scar breaks into a completely psychopathic smile, laughing at the fact that he managed to trick the hero. The villain applies more force to the hilt, pushing the stained blade against No's chest. Damien and Eve watch the terrible betrayal attack, shocked by the red-haired brother's cowardly attitude. Scar rants furiously, stating that he would never accept surrendering or bowing before someone like him. He pulls the sword back with violence, shouting that no one will stand above his power. No coughs and falls to his knees on the stone floor while clutching his severe wound in his abdomen. Desperate upon seeing the young man's terrible state, young Eve runs toward him, shouting his name. Damien seriously holds the young woman's arm to stop her from interfering in the duel that remains active. Scar raises his metal blade, furiously guaranteeing that the combat and Noah's journey will end there. However, one final swift sword slash cuts through the air, producing a large mark on the ground. Scar is hit head-on by a desperate counterattack and falls on his back, completely defeated. The red-haired villain lies motionless on the lawn after receiving the final impact of No's strike. Silence returns to the mansion's courtyard while both combatants remain fallen on the stones. No realizes with sadness that his new family prefers to sacrifice their own lives in the name of pride. The image reveals both warriors lying down, showing the terrible cost of the dispute. Eve frees herself from Damien and runs desperately. Falling to her knees beside the young man's injured form, Damien warns that the wound is critical, but she announces that she will use her secret magic to heal her brother. The young woman concentrates to her maximum, releasing a dense and bright green healing mist over the young man. She places both hands on his chest and activates the first form of her shadow flower style. The shadow lantern spell spreads through the young man, beginning to regenerate his internal tissues. The green, mystical energy flows swiftly through the energy channels of Noah's arm, relieving the pain. Eve sheds tears of worry as she channels her last spiritual strength into the spell. No wakes up confused, and the young woman explains in relief that she can control his cores very well. The young man breaks into a slight smile and sincerely thanks his sister for saving his life there. Eve points to the fallen form of Scar and announces that the reward of victory now belongs to Noah. Scar's red demonic core floats in the air, emanating a large amount of dark energy. No focuses his attention on the glowing sphere, realizing that this is his chance to become stronger. The hero kneels before the defeated rival's form under the watchful and calm gaze of his sister Eve. He extends his right hand toward the core, absorbing the opponent's dense red energy. No feels a colossal amount of golden and purple electrical power course through his entire new body. With his eyes glowing purple, the young man watches the system screen confirm the fusion with the new core. The system window reveals that his demonic core level has risen from 2 to 5 stars of power. No is surprised to notice that his dark energy has advanced the equivalent of years of physical training. The young man observes his surroundings, satisfied to realize that the dangerous situation is resolved. The blonde brother, C's, approaches the location, walking calmly after the conclusion of the combat. C's surprisingly admits that he never imagined his younger brother would be capable of defeating the dangerous Scar. He asks if Eve is all right, and the young woman confirms, saying that Damien saved her at the most critical moment. C's is impressed, and Damien states with folded arms that he only fulfilled the family laws. The older brother prepares to leave, stowing his huge metal shield shield on his back. Damien passes by the young man, casting a serious and evaluative look toward the victorious hare. The other siblings observe their ally's departure, maintaining expressions of concern and great tension. Damien curiously reflects on No's mysterious strength, which seems to go far beyond the common core. Suddenly, a white-haired subordinate approaches the group, interrupting their thoughts. The palace servant formally announces that the powerful patriarch Victor is summoning No now. The image reveals the imposing architecture of the great castle, where the feared leader of the family resides. Before the throne, Victor comments that he heard about Noo, taking the demonic core of the defeated Scar. The powerful leader glares at the young master with a piercing look, demanding confirmation of the facts. Noo maintains an elegant posture and replies directly, confirming that he emerged victorious from the combat. Victor asks about Scar's power, and Noo sincerely admits that his brother surpassed him in everything. Intrigued, the patriarch questions why the young man believes he managed to win the dispute. Noo feels his father's immense spiritual pressure and concentrates to give the best possible answer. He states with determination that his thirst for strength is greater than that of any other opponent. Victor breaks into a slight, satisfied smile, considering that an excellent answer from a warrior. The patriarch warns that the deceased committed unpardonable crimes and swears to give a reward to the young man. Noo takes the chance and asks as a prize to be sent on a mission to a very specific location. The father is amazed by the lack of greed, pointing out that he could have asked for weapons or gold. The young man replies that the gain obtained on this journey will be immensely greater than any treasure. Satisfied with his son's focus, Victor accepts the terms and asks what the desired destination is. A carriage crosses a dangerous and narrow dirt road in the middle of misty mountains. Inside the vehicle, Noo explains to his maids that that trip is not a leisure stroll. The young man breaks into a calm smile and asks them to take care of all matters around him. The two maids readily agree, guaranteeing they will do their best to support him in the mission. Suddenly, Lydia widens her eyes upon spotting a huge and impressive landscape through the window. The maid waves excitedly, pointing to the horizon and announcing that their destination is visible. Noo observes the mythical city built through the ancient alliance between dragons and human beings. It is the legendary Draconia, a grand city surrounded by enormous peaks and winged beasts in the sky. Upon stepping out of the vehicle, the young man is received by guards who ask if he is the Daskor heir. The scaly, skinned warriors formally introduce themselves as the official envoys of Draconia. The guards offer to guide the group from there along the mountainous stone path. Noo focuses his purple gaze as he feels a strange and hostile alteration in the energy around him. The young man looks intently toward the mountains, realizing there is something dangerous approaching. Noo smiles slightly, thanking the local envoys for the important help they brought. Suddenly, red ogres leap from the hills, shouting that they have located the target from the Daskor family. One of the monsters lands violently on the ground, generating a large curtain of dust on the road. A horde of ogres with sharp horns completely surrounds the young master's carriage on the spot. The scaly guards draw their weapons in fright and ask Noo to fall back to protect himself. The ogre clan is a warrior race that fiercely disputes control over that mountainous region. They value brute strength and conflict, while the lizardmen respect order and laws. The leader explains that the beasts are trying to interfere with the mission, and Noo guarantees that he understands the danger. The hero orders Lydia and Selena to immediately get inside the vehicle to stay safe from the attack. The ogres mock the young man's presence, claiming that Draconia has truly fallen by sending a weak kid. The huge ogre leader mocks Noo, telling him to turn back if he wants to remain alive. The hero only displays an ironic smile in the face of so much arrogance coming from that red beast. Noo returns the provocation, saying he will spare his opponent's life if he flees immediately. Completely infuriated by the young man's mockery, the monster calls him an insolent brat on the path. He expands his body size, accumulating energy and swearing to crush every bone of the young master. The ogre advances, delivering a heavy blow that generates an immense curtain of dust and wind in the clearing. Noo remains calm and takes his quick draw stance, charging his sword with mixed energy. The adversary's gigantic double fist descends at high speed toward the young hero's head. The young man takes a spectacular leap backward, easily escaping the beast's violent charge. The punch's impact smashes the stone ground, generating deep cracks across the entire battlefield. No performs a mid-air acrobatic move upside down, keeping his purple eyes sharply focused on his rival. The monster roars with extreme fury, while the young master prepares to deliver the counterattack. The hero plummets toward the adversary, manipulating the airflow to accelerate his descent. He activates the first form of his divine style, releasing the powerful mystical brilliance technique. A colossal and brilliant golden slash cuts through the air and directly strikes the giant ogre's position. The opponent is completely paralyzed with surprise upon noticing the hero appearing right behind him. No-O lands a devastating blow that throws the immense red creature far away with extreme force. The ogre violently collides against the rocky mountain wall, causing major destruction. No lands smoothly and comments that the opponent relied only on brute force without technique. The young man points out that his strength is impressive, but his attack movements are very slow. Humiliated, the monster gets up, shouting in anger, and calling the young master a presumptuous fool. The creature delivers a colossal side punch toward the hero, who is floating in mid-air. No dodges the blow with extreme lightness, passing close to the beast's arm with incredible mastery. He executes a perfect diagonal slash with his golden blade, slicing the ogre's limb in mid-air. The ogre leader coughs severely and collapses, defeated on the rocky ground after the final slash. The hero looks at the other beasts on the mountains and challenges them to come fight him together. The young man waits on guard, facing the remaining enemies observing from the top of the hill. The ogres roar in fury and begin to descend the rocks at high speed to attack the hero. No-O calmly observes the horde projecting itself toward the ground. Determined to crush the young noble, he concentrates and prepares the second form of his divine combat style, emanating a lot of light. With swift movements, he fires blades of golden energy, slashing all the monsters in mid-air. The forms of the defeated ogres fall lifeless to the earth, confirming the young man's swift victory. The guards of Draconia watch in shock, admitting that his strength surpasses all rumors. The maids step out of the vehicle praising the hero, and Noah scolds them for disobeying his order. Selena smiles and states that a maid's duty is always to witness her master's great triumphs. No glances toward the top of the mountain and invites the last hidden enemy to reveal himself from there. In the sky, an imposing warrior mounted on a red-winged dragon observes the young man seriously. The mysterious knight in golden armor leaps from his mount, swiftly descending from the clouds. He lands imposingly, generating a large curtain of sand on the road before everyone. The warrior reveals that he witnessed the entire battle and praises the strength that the young man demonstrated there. He introduces himself as Adalbalt Fangray, the powerful commander of the local dragon knights. When questioned about not helping, he states that a king cannot be so weak as to need saving. No-O smiles and asks if he passed the warrior's test, and the commander nods in confirmation. Adalbalt promises to guide the young master directly into the presence of the Honorable Lord Alcardos. The journey is resumed with the official escort of the dragons, crossing the city's stone bridges. Selena is marveled to notice that humans and lizardmen peacefully coexist on the streets. The maids comment that a kingdom with so much harmony between different races is extremely rare. The guide suggests that they explore the surroundings later, guaranteeing that everyone will like it there. A majestic green dragon crosses the sky above the carriage, showing the grandiosity of Draconia. They enter a cave illuminated by mystical blue runes. Led by the warrior's lantern, the group arrives before an immense and ancient stone gate, carved with the image of a sleeping dragon. Adalbalt raises his lantern and loudly announces that he has brought the young master Noah Daskor there. The carving on the stone glows in a yellowish tone, while a deep voice orders everyone to enter the hall. The gigantic stone structure begins to open slowly, revealing the darkness of the mysterious room. The group advances through the large entrance, being immediately received by a violent gust of mystical wind. No feels an overwhelming spiritual pressure and concludes that is equivalent to that of his powerful father. The scaly guards cannot withstand the aura's strength and fall to their knees on the floor, unable to stand up. The The frightened maids take shelter right behind the hero, who firmly resists that terrible gravity. In the midst of the immense room's shadows, two bright blue eyes appear, staring at the new visitors. A calm and imposing voice resounds through the darkness, welcoming the young heir of the family. It is the legendary Lord Alcardos, a majestic white dragon who calls No a young collaborator. The group finally kneels before the imposing altar of the Grand White Dragon King. Alcardos, the maids and lizardman guards wait in absolute silence out of respect for the deity's presence. Noah steps forward, officially introducing himself as an heir sent by the Dasgor house. Alcardos brings his colossal snout closer and sincerely thanks them for the support sent by the influential family. The massive dragon focuses his bright blue eye and whispers that he senses a nostalgic energy coming from the young man. No becomes thoughtful, knowing that the Dragon King is a mystical deity who has lived since the ancient ages of the world. The young man clenches his fist, making his mixed purple and gold aura of energy shine with great intensity. The warrior channels all his spiritual power, leaving his powerful mystical presence active before the king. Alcardos observes the glow of Noah's flames from above, confirming the grandeur of his new divine core. The colossal being is moved to see that sacred glow again after centuries of total oblivion. The king orders Adalbalt to reveal every detail of the secret mission to the young heir of the Dasgor house. The commander takes the floor, ready to explain the complex plea for help made to the noble family. He reveals that his race of lizardmen has been facing a terrible and fierce war against the ogres for years. The warrior explains that the balance of power in the region was recently broken in favor of their enemies. He points out that the ogres have welcomed an elite strategist who ended up destroying Draconia's defenses. No deduces that they are seeking help to balance the war, but the king warns that the mission goes beyond that. The military leaders of the enemy race are moving their pieces violently, conquering more territories on the map. Adalbalt touches his sword and confesses that their real intention is to put a decisive end to the conflict. The scaly warrior reveals that the mission must be completed quickly before a tragic event occurs. He shares that the venerable Dragon King Alcardos is very old and nearing the twilight of his long life. No grows thoughtful upon realizing that the time left for the powerful leader is extremely short. The commander reveals that Alcardos' passing will give rise to an immense power source called the Core of Alcardos. No remembers that in his past life, this mystical treasure fell into the wrong hands, causing a great catastrophe. With determination, the young man accepts the difficult mission, promising to stop the core from being stolen by the villains. The king thanks him and promises that Noah will be able to collect his remains as rare materials after his departure. The commander guarantees full support for the journey and decides to reveal one more dangerous secret about their rivals. Adalbalt says that rumors have surfaced that the ogres managed to obtain the legendary Orb of the Eight Treasures. No becomes quite worried upon receiving the information about the possession of that dangerous mystical item. This powerful artifact is a relic capable of overwhelmingly increasing a nation's military power. The hero promises to investigate the situation and plans to ask Eve for help to uncover the ogre's secrets. No decides to walk through the busy streets of Draconia to begin his personal search for allies. The young man reflects that a total war between the races is imminent and that he cannot solve everything alone. The young man wonders if he should recruit an ancient and powerful companion he met in his past life. He analyzes ancient writings carved into the plaza's walls, looking for clues about her whereabouts. Noah walks to the city's central monument, hoping to find any sign of the legendary warrior. He remembers that she used to operate in that area and celebrates locating her much faster than he had planned. This was Saint Liliana, a powerful 9-star healer who saved his life countless times in the past. Noah approaches the young woman walking peacefully through the square, feeling a huge wave of nostalgia upon seeing her again. Liliana notices the young man's fixed gaze and stares back at him with her expressive, bright blue eyes. Slightly uncomfortable, the young woman politely asks him to stop staring at her so directly. Liliana explains that her next musical performance in the central square is still a long time away. No is surprised by the term, and she curiously asks if he didn't come there to listen to her songs. Quite confused, he apologizes and asks the young woman's name, trying to understand this new reality. The young woman holds the neck of her strange musical instrument, preparing to give a demonstration. With a joyful smile, Liliana formally introduces herself as a simple traveling bard from that region. No is amazed to note that the powerful Saint is using a bard disguise to hide her power. The system reveals that her stats are at 6 stars, confirming that she hasn't reached her peak yet. No takes a serious stance, calling her by name and stating that he has an important proposal to make. After hearing the entire explanation, Liliana comments that she now understands the gravity of the war against the ogres. However, to the young man's surprise, the girl crosses her arms and firmly refuses to join his fighting group. No is surprised by Liliana's sudden refusal and calmly asks what her reason is. The young woman focuses her bright golden gaze, revealing that she can feel his demonic core. Liliana points out that a strong dark energy emanates from No, leaving the courtyard under a tense atmosphere. To convince her, the young man raises his arm, releasing small golden sparks of his mystical energy. The saint is intrigued to notice that his sacred power is perfectly mixed with the darkness. Liliana accepts the invitation, but imposes an unusual condition, making the young master quite curious. With a mischievous smile on her face, she asks the young man to find her a perfect romantic partner. No goes into complete shock and stutters in surprise, unable to believe the girl's bizarre request. The young man imagines the awkward situations from the past, remembering his ally's peculiar habits. She demands that the suitor be a strong gentleman, forbidding anyone with a demonic core. No smirks, realizing that Liliana's enthusiastic personality hasn't changed one bit. The hero thinks of the dragon Adelbalt and guarantees he has the perfect candidate to help her out literally. The young woman extends her hand, accepting the partnership, and warns that she will place total trust in his words. No shakes Lily on his hand firmly, sealing the deal under his new identity as No Daskor. The carriage departs, leaving the beautiful mountainous city of Draconia behind, heading toward their new goal. Walking through the mountains, Liliana asks why they are going so far, and No tells her they need to train. The young man reveals that there is a powerful magical tool resting in a hidden sanctuary in that region. Suddenly, No's sharp instincts detect a strong threat approaching the rocky location. The duo reaches the collapsed entrance of a dark cave that exudes a dangerous spiritual energy. No protects his face when a strong gust of wind and a purple glow suddenly cover the entrance. An immense beam of purple mystical light is fired from the inner altar, illuminating the entire mountain area. An ancient magic circle activates on the rock, releasing a terrifying defensive shockwave. No quickly draws his weapon and steps in front of Liliana to protect her from the mystical impact. The young man delivers a precise slash, containing the advance of energy with the strength of his electrifying blade. A large cloud of purple smoke dissipates, and No prepares himself, knowing the sanctuary is heavily guarded. They enter the darkness of the cave, advancing with extra caution, with every step taken on the stone floor. The young bard points out that the barrier served as a warning of extreme danger for anyone who tried to pass. She jokingly asks if he is scared, but the young master guarantees that he is not afraid at all. The inside of the cave is filled with beautiful, bright blue crystals that dimly light the path. No takes the lead of the group, keeping his sword ready to act at the slightest sign of any threat. Suddenly, a swift shadow cuts through the air, forcing the hero to raise his weapon in a quick defensive stance. 3 beasts resembling scaly, horned wolves emerge from the shadows, running toward the group. Liliana opens her magical support book and says she will take care of assisting the rear during the combat. One of the spiked wolves leaps at high speed, trying to bite the hero with its sharp jaws. No concentrates, channeling electricity into his blade, and prepares to deliver a vertical slash. With extremely fast movements, the young man slices the two beasts in mid-air using his divine swordsmanship. The defeated monsters fall divided in half on the ground, while the hero twirls his sword with mastery. The hare smirks mockingly, claiming he can defeat opponents of that weak level all by himself. Liliano is highly impressed by the young man's speed and praises his combat skills. Suddenly, a massive scaly tail emerges from the shadows of the cave, moving stealthily behind him. No notices the lethal presence too late and desperately shouts the name of his new ally in the area. Another giant, spiked wolf drops from the sanctuary ceiling, aiming directly at the young woman's back. The beast hits the ground violently, kicking up dust, but Liliana manages to step back and dodge in time. The young bard gathers momentum and delivers a spectacular kick wrapped in golden light toward the monster. The impact of the physical blow throws the giant wolf far against the stone walls, destroying the creature. She adjusts her hat and proudly comments that she knows how to defend herself very well, and No admits her great strength. The young woman points out that she has never seen monsters of that species, and No explains that the cave gathers dragon energy. He details that the high magical concentration causes the local beasts to evolve in a unique and dangerous way. The monster roars in pain while the girl admits in fear that she didn't imagine that place would be so hostile. No comforts his ally, assuring her that the magical tool they are looking for is very close to being found. Liliana asks in surprise if the item they are looking for is really a powerful magical tool. No explains that the mysterious artifact will serve as an essential safety guarantee for the group. They continue walking quickly, venturing deeper into the dangerous rocky setting of that mystical cave. The hare announces that they are about to reach the deepest and darkest area of the dangerous sanctuary. Liliana widens her expressive blue eyes as she catches a glimpse of something shining in the center of the hall. The young bard points joyfully, indicating the pedestal where a very old metal sword rests. No senses the danger and screams desperately, ordering her to stop and not touch the mystical object. A terrifying and gigantic hostile presence suddenly emerges from the shadows of the bluish cave ceiling. The young man focuses his sharp purple gaze, detecting the hidden enemy's immense hostile intent. He shouts a warning for her to be careful as he launches himself toward his chaotic companion. No catches the young woman in his arms at the last second, saving her from the attack of a terrible spiked lizard. A colossal creature covered in sharp purple spikes roars fiercely, blocking the hero's path. The hero notes with concern that the only exit route from that cave has been completely sealed by the monster. The mystical beast opens its huge mouth and fires an overwhelming blast of red flames at them. No curses in frustration upon noticing that the wide range of that fire attack makes a normal dodge impossible. Liliana reacts quickly, opening her grimoire to cast a powerful defensive spell. The bard extends her arm and begins chanting mystical verses to alter the physical laws of the area. She invokes the barrier of the sacred ring, creating an immense hexagonal shield in the inner courtyard. The colossal flames wash over the entire stone hall, crashing violently against the saint's mystical shield. The intense heat melts the surrounding rocks, generating smoke and sparks that cover their entire field of vision. The magic barrier shines with great intensity, perfectly withstanding all of the enemy's firepower. No praises Liliana's fantastic support skills upon seeing her contain the dragon's violent attack. The young man gathers momentum and steps forcefully on the rocky floor, going on the offensive against the giant creature. Wrapped in purple and golden lightning, he relentlessly charges against the body of the massive elite opponent. No jumps high toward the beast's chest, preparing a finishing strike with his electrified sword. He executes a powerful attack that tears through the monster's tough scales, causing massive physical damage. The spiked lizard's dark essence splatters across the stone floor, confirming the effectiveness of the mystical slash. The beast lets out a roar of extreme pain, trying to bite the invader who moves with terrifying speed. No performs multiple acrobatic spins, delivering continuous strikes that confuse the enemy's defense. Liliana warns with concern that the violence of the combat is causing the cave walls to collapse quickly. The young bard flips through her mystical book, preparing to cast a new containment spell in the area. She summons the pillars of the sacred ring, channeling golden chains of light to immobilize the opponent. The electric chains bind the massive purple-spiked lizard, preventing it from making any more moves. Liliana shouts in a hurry, warning that the containment won't last long, and tells him to finish it quickly. No decides to concentrate all his blade's energy into a single point to prevent a complete collapse. The monster tries to deliver a desperate blow, using its huge spiky tail against No's position. The young man dodges nimbly and activates the first form of his divine style, preparing the ultimate strike. With a blinding flash of light and darkness, the young master's mystical sword gathers an immense amount of power. No leaps head on into the open jaws of the creature, which tries in vain to break his sacred charge. He lets out a battle cry, delivering the divine thrust that pierces the adversary's armored scales. The tip of his weapon channels the total release of the mixed energy, exploding inside the opponent's head. A colossal beam of purple and yellow energy cuts through the cave, destroying the lizard spectacularly. The young man lands masterfully, while the sanctuary floor continues to crack due to the immense power generated. The defeated form of the purple, horned beast collapses lifelessly on the ground, sealing the definitive victory. No checks if she got hurt, but Liliana says she is fine and insists they leave before the cave caves in. They run side by side while the hero takes the opportunity to collect the legendary sword embedded in the stone pedestal. With a firm motion, the young man grips the weapon's golden hilt, which emits a purple glow on the rock. No raises the mystical dragon ring sword, satisfyingly confirming his possession of the powerful dispersion tool. The young man agrees with his partner and tells them to quickly leave that dangerous place before it collapses. On the horizon, warriors mounted on wyverns cross the skies of Draconia, maintaining watch over the kingdom. No hands a mysterious letter to Liliana, making the young woman quite curious about the paper's contents. The young man explains with a smile that he is fulfilling his promise to introduce her to the commander of the knights, Adalbert. Liliana is overjoyed with the gift and thanks No very enthusiastically for all the help. The young woman runs off very excited to see the commander, while the protagonist bids her farewell with a wave. Later, No walks calmly toward the entrance of a bustling local tavern. The hero enters the tavern looking for someone, while the patrons converse happily at their tables. The waitress approaches and tells No that a mysterious visitor is already waiting for him there. No is surprised by that news and wonders who the mysterious guest at the venue could be. The blonde young man named She's waves from afar upon spotting the hero. Showing great familiarity with him, No approaches and asks in surprise what his older brother is doing there so suddenly. She's hands over a sealed envelope, saying that all the important details of the research are described there. Their intelligent ally Eve investigated the orb of the 8 treasures deeply right after No's contact. She's yawns as the hero reads that the dangerous artifact was recently stolen from a neighboring kingdom. The criminal fled toward Draconia, indicating that the relic is meant to be used in the upcoming war. The leader sends an important warning about the grave dangers of handling that powerful mystical item. The report indicates that the orb's power is devastating and capable of wiping an entire city off the map. The terrible mystical magic known as Starfall is capable of causing unprecedented devastation. She's mentions the name of the destructive magic, while No carefully reads the details on the paper. No is startled to note that this was the same magic that destroyed Draconia in his past life. The message ends by warning that she sent She's as backup and demands that the young man return safely from the mission. The blonde explains that besides being backup, he wants to observe closely how the dragon knights fight. She smiles, saying it is a great deal, and the young master sincerely thanks his brother for the backup. Suddenly, the tavern doors are thrown open with great violence, catching the attention of everyone inside. Liliana appears quite angry, dragging the frightened Commander Adalbert right behind her into the room. The young bard points at No, shouting furiously that this situation was not what they had agreed upon. She slams the table, shouting that the warrior is married and that she would never accept being intimately involved with a family man All the tavern patrons are completely shocked by the bizarre revelation made by the girl. No tries to hide his embarrassment upon realizing that he had completely forgotten that the commander was married. The commander also apologizes awkwardly, claiming he would never accept betraying his beloved wife. No tries to calm Liliana down, promising that he will find another single candidate for her. However, Liliana focuses her gaze on the table and falls in love upon noticing the presence of the blonde young man sitting there. She notices her strange reaction and becomes very confused, understanding absolutely nothing of what is going on. Without hesitation, the bard runs over and grabs Sheez's arm with a bright and passionate look. Liliana hugs him, stating that he is her perfect type for having an incredibly muscular and defined body. Sheez goes into a total panic over the bard's boldness and tries to break free, wondering what is wrong with her. No just watches and laughingly explains that the blonde is the perfect ally he had promised to introduce. Liliana squeezes Sheez's hands very tightly, leaving the blonde hero extremely embarrassed on the spot. The girl asks shamelessly if he would spend a romantic evening with her, leaving the blonde completely horrified. Sheez pulls away, blushing with embarrassment, shouting at her not to say intimate things so easily. Sheez asks no for help, but the protagonist laughingly says that the bard can do whatever she wants with his brother. The hero gives a thumbs up and happily announces that his promise to the bard has been fulfilled. Sheez tries to push Liliana away, but the girl clings to his neck with extreme strength and determination. He pushes her cheek away while the bard happily guarantees that she will be under his care from now on. The blonde shouts angrily that he never agreed to that crazy deal, trying to break free from the girl's arms. Sheez takes a massive leap to escape, running desperately from the relentless pursuit of the young bard. Liliana shouts as he flees, while the protagonist watches the whole chaotic scene highly amused. The blonde seriously states that he will pass on all of Eve's important findings straight to the Dragon King. No agrees and guarantees he will do everything he can on his end during his brother's temporary absence. Before leaving, the brother seriously asks the young man not to wear himself out too much in the difficult war. The young man warns that the fearsome ogre king is a colossal opponent with a power level equal to their father's. Sheez runs desperately to escape while Liliana shouts, asking him to wait for her. No acts quickly and grabs Liliana's clothes to prevent the girl from going after his blonde brother. The hero advises that they unfortunately have no time to lose chasing his brother at that critical moment. No points toward the valley and reveals that they are about to invade the dangerous main base of the enemy ogres. Liliana looks at the huge village with concern and asks if he really plans to attack the place with just the two of them. The young man explains that their real goal is to destroy the orb of the 8 treasures and not to start an open war. Even after hearing her partner's sensible explanation, the young bard remains quite apprehensive about his plan. She questions how they will manage to slip past all that heavy monster security in the village. Noah suddenly carries Liliana in his arms, confidently commenting that ogres are very slow creatures. The protagonist concentrates his powerful magical lightning energy into his boots to maximize his speed. With the girl in his arms, Noah assures her with a smile on his face that they will pass by the guards like a flash of lightning. The hero dashes at high speed, leaving only a bright trail of mystical energy on the stone stairs. The duo crosses the entire monster village at an absurd speed, leaving no time for any enemy reaction. One of the guard ogres feels a slight gust of wind and a mysterious glow passing quickly near his position. Another red warrior gets spooked when he notices a golden blur running toward the main gates of the base. The hero knocks out one of the watchmen on the way without even slowing down his frantic pace through the fortress. The ogre partner of the knocked out guard goes into shock upon seeing his comrades suddenly collapse on the courtyard floor. The monster shouts desperately, warning that they are under enemy attack while the hero duo runs past. No realizes the guards noticed the invasion, but Liliana tells him not to worry about that detail. The young bard proudly reveals that she has already cast a soundproof magic barrier that muffled all the noise in the area. No smiles, praising the incredible skills of his ally, who always proves to be extremely useful in battles. Thanks to the barrier, the other ogres remain standing at their posts, having no idea about the ongoing invasion. Liliana asks her companion if he knows exactly where the monsters are keeping the powerful artifact. No replies that the mystical item must be hidden in the deepest area where the supreme chief of the tribe resides. The hero remembers that in his past life, Fungus was just a coward who always allied himself with the strongest. The young man concludes that if this criminal is involved with the ogres, the coveted orb will surely be guarded there. The two finally land on the stone floor, ready to begin the most dangerous part of their infiltration. They stop before the huge gates of the main fortress, which exude an evil and intimidating energy. Very carefully, the duo opens a crack in the large wooden doors to observe the inside of the dark hall. Noah signals that the way is clear, and the two silently begin descending the inner staircase. The heavy doors close on their own with a muffled thud, sealing the young invaders inside that lava temple. They run quickly toward the center of the massive underground temple, lit only by streams of lava. No spots the glowing altar and tells his ally that he has finally found the legendary orb they were looking for so much. However, the protagonist stops abruptly upon feeling an overwhelming hostile presence emerging behind them. A surprise attack strikes from the shadows, forcing the duo to do a backward acrobatic flip to escape the impact. The young man realizes there was a hidden presence in the hall that he couldn't detect before the strike. The hero is amazed by the speed of the adversary, who moved at the exact moment he turned around in the hall. A colossal red ogre appears, holding the glowing artifact in his claws, and comments that he didn't expect intruders. The imposing warrior praises the youngster's ability to silently slip past all his security. No prepares to fight, knowing that facing that colossal monster won't be an easy task for them. The enemy leader emanates his black aura and intimidatingly confesses that he despises cowardly tricks in battle. Liliana apologizes in a mocking tone as she opens her spell Grimwire, ready to support her partner. No takes a firm fighting stance and draws his sword, which shines with an intense and powerful purple energy. The imposing ogre Grand General, Gazel, roars furiously, promising to crush the two invaders with his own hands. The terrifying ogre General Gazel emanates an overwhelming shadowy energy, staring down the two young invaders. Faced with the imminent danger, Noah quickly activates his mystical appraisal skill to check the enemy. The system begins to process the information, but the adversary's physical stats appear hidden. Noah goes into shock upon reading that the bodily resistance of the powerful ogre leader is simply immeasurable. Sweat drips down the young master's face as he realizes he is about to fight an absurd opponent. The young man decides to charge in with everything he has and tells Liliana to destroy the precious artifact as soon as they can retreat. With a war cry, the hero attacks the giant monster's chest using the full force of his mystical blade. No tries his absolute best, but feels enormous physical resistance when attempting to pierce the ogre's armored skin. The blow doesn't even make the giant flinch, and he mocks the hero, saying his attack is as weak as an insect's. Geisel scoffs at human fragility and strikes Noah, throwing the young man's body against the ground with extreme force. With a simple, humiliating flick of his massive finger, the ogre general repels the young warrior's assault. The mystical impact of the blow sends Noah flying through the air, causing the young man to crash violently into the hall. A large explosion of dust spreads through the underground temple, highlighting the monster's brute strength. The young man leans against the stone floor, gasping for air as he tries to catch his breath after the terrible impact. A terrible thud echoes as Gazel's giant stone club smashes the ground near the protagonist. The fearsome monster leaps with his club raised, laughing loudly and proudly, claiming that this is a real weapon. The general's club crashes down with fury, but is contained at the the last second by a brilliant golden energy shield. Liliana keeps her grimoire open, channeling all her mana to sustain the sacred defensive barrier. Gazel finds that contest of pure physical strength amusing and increases the pressure against the young bard's shield. The ogre general grips the handle of his massive stone weapon, concentrating his destructive power even further. The monster's colossal strength crushes the barrier, generating frightening cracks throughout the golden structure. Liliana begins to falter due to the strain and screams desperately, calling out her partner's name. The general wears a sadistic smile as he realizes the light shield is about to shatter completely. The mystical shield explodes into 1,000 pieces, releasing a violent wave of destructive energy throughout the hall. A thick curtain of smoke and brine covers the area, while the temple floor cracks under the violent impact. The ogre is surprised to note that the hero managed to contain the final blow even after the barrier broke. Taking advantage of the opening, No advances swiftly, delivering an oblique slash to try to wound his rival's chest. Liliana retreats to a safe distance and asks with concern if her partner is truly all right. No confesses that he is struggling and is stunned by the devastating power of just one of the enemy's blows. The young man seriously warns that they have no chance of victory if they keep fighting head-on. With determination in his eyes, the young master plans to use an alternative strategy to overcome his adversary. He decides to stake his chances on a risky tactic, scattering special fragments across the stone floor. No asks Liliana to cooperate precisely with the plan, and the young bard prepares to cast her magic. The young man throws his magic sword toward his opponent to serve as a temporary distraction in the fight. Liliana invokes divine judgment, releasing an impressive rain of golden light spears from the ceiling. No runs at high speed underneath the storm of shining spears, aiming for the ogre general's blind spot. Gazel lets out a confident laugh, shouting that weak attacks like that would never be able to defeat him. With a quick movement of his club, the monster easily destroys the spears of light created by the saint. The young bard bites her lip in fear as she realizes that her strongest spell caused no real damage. Suddenly, a masked warrior emerges from the shadows, observing the combat amidst a tense and dangerous atmosphere. No activates the divine power technique, concentrating an intense, brilliant golden aura in his hands. Under the hero's command, the previously scattered fragments begin to levitate and glow intensely. The young man fires the flying blade of the Saint Demon, catching the colossal adversary by surprise with the attack. No shouts with conviction, warning that the monster will have nowhere to hide from that combined power. An overwhelming pillar of light and golden lightning strikes Gazel head-on, destroying everything around him with fury. The ogre general's eye glows with an unwavering murderous rage, even after receiving the impact of the spell. The monster advances with hatred through the glare, cutting through the air with his stone club to crush the invader. No doesn't retreat and decides to face the giant face-to-face, running at speed toward the enemy. The young man prepares his physical stance, gathering all the rest of his spiritual energy into a clenched fist. The hero delivers a powerful rising punch, invoking a giant magic circle to strike Gazel's chin. No falls backward after throwing the punch, but quickly uses the air to recover his balance in combat. The hero quickly points his index finger, launching his mystical sword toward the enemy's floating target. The sword flies rapidly and strikes the energy orb that was under the protection of the ogre general in the hall. No grits his teeth in rage and screams with all his might for the powerful artifact to be destroyed once and for all. The attack hits the core of the artifact, generating glowing cracks and starting a massive chain reaction. Waves of energy and yellow lightning begin to escape from the damaged orb, which is about to explode in a fury. Gazel extends his hand to contain the jewel's terrible reaction, while the violent explosion pushes the hero away. A blinding and destructive glow covers the vision of both combatants, announcing the trigger of the massive detonation. A colossal explosion shakes the temple's stone structures, generating an immense wave of heat throughout the location. The destructive impact sweeps across the entire ogre village, frightening the monsters with the immense release of mystical energy. In the air, the dew is enveloped by a beehive-shaped golden shield to protect them from the dangerous debris. Liliana sighs in relief, believing they won, but Noah seriously warns her not to let her guard down yet. A malicious laugh echoes through the flames, revealing that the ogre general survived the terrible detonation. Gazel resurges imposingly from the smoke, mocking the attack and calling the explosion a fun little trick. A horde of ogre warriors runs toward the heroes, who realize the imminent danger of being surrounded. The hero prepares agilely to escape, knowing that facing that entire army would be pure madness. A colossal pillar collapses, breaking the stone floor as the monsters try to crush their escape route. Suddenly, a huge dragon crosses the reddened sky, and No smiles upon recognizing that mystical creature. Shees appears, riding the mystical creature, and hurriedly reaches out his hand, shouting for his brother to climb on immediately. No picks Liliana up in his arms again, and hurries to leave before they are caught by their rivals. Purple energy cables pull the youngsters upward, saving both heroes from the clutches of the enemy warriors. From high in the sky, No analytically observes the battlefield, planning the next steps of his journey. On the ground, Gazel smiles sadistically, holding the damaged orb and emanating a terrible, dark bloodlust. The mystical orb of treasures appears full of cracks, proving that No's plan actually worked. No focuses his bright purple eyes on the horizon, aware that the war is only just beginning in that region. The red dragon flies toward the sunset, carrying the youngsters safely back to the kingdom of Draconia. In the meeting room, the dragon generals are surprised to see No return alive and ask about the artifact. No explains that he delivered a fatal blow that made the jewel's power spiral out of control, reducing its usage limit. Shees comments with satisfaction that thanks to this, the military situation of the Kingdom of Draconia has improved considerably. Suddenly, a messenger comes running into the meeting room, shouting that he needs to deliver an urgent report. The dragon commander panics upon hearing that the entire army of the ogre tribe has launched an invasion at the border. Noah stays calm and affirms that everything is going according to plan, as the ogres want to decide the war before the jewel decays. The hero promises to put a definitive end to the conflict before the venerable Dragon King's life comes to an end. On the horizon, General Gazel leads his relentless horde of ogres, with a macabre smile plastered on his face.